Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the 229th edition of the Boxing Asylum podcast. My name is Steve Wellings. I'm your host for this evening. Joining me on the call, we have David Loback, Donny Baseball, and a very special guest has jumped on with us, Kieran Mulvaney from HBO Boxing. How are you this evening, Kieran?
Pretty good, Steve. Thanks very much for asking me on.
No problem at all. We're going to be speaking to Kieran for about the first half an hour or so, guys. After that, we'll get into the Adonis Stevenson, Dmitry Kudryashov, all those bits and pieces. And then we'll go on to the value of the weeks and any Facebook or Twitter questions that you may have. If you do have any Twitter questions, hit me up and I'll hand them over to Kieran as best as I can. Any quick fire questions would be greatly appreciated. Work, obviously, most boxing fans would be with HBO Boxing, ESPN, maybe even your environmental work as well. For those who aren't too familiar with you, would you be able to just give us a very quick, brief run over of how you got from where you were to where you are now?
Yeah, like you said, my background really is environmental writing and environmental activism. And I actually even left school when I was 16 to pursue that. But I'd always been a boxing fan. And by the time I was about, I think it was 35, I'd been writing about the environment and doing that stuff for a good long time by that stage, 18, 19 years. And I wanted to try and do something a little bit different, just for a little bit, just to recharge the batteries. And I thought to myself, as you do, I'll go to Las Vegas for 8 months and write a book about boxing. And I went down to Vegas. The whole idea was to just give myself a complete start in something completely different. And then I would come back and go back to my previous life. And I went to Vegas and I met various folks there. And the whole idea was to write this book about Vegas boxing people, Vegas boxers, and people involved in the whole scene down there. And I did about, essentially half a book for a proposal, and I liked it. My agent liked it, and we sent it to about 20 publishers, and they all said, "Hey, this is really interesting. Boxing fans don't buy books." And so I'd spent, 8 or 9 months working on this and sinking money into it, and had nothing to show for it. But just simply by hanging out around the media rooms at various fights, I got various folks noticed me, and I did some writing for a couple of different websites, and it didn't pay. And then I was fortunate enough to get put in contact with ESPN, who wanted a features writer. So I started to do some features writing for ESPN. Paid me money, but didn't pay me enough. But still, I kept going and sort of paying my own way and trying to do more stuff. Then I got the chance to do some writing for Reuters, to be their boxing correspondent in the States. Again, paid a bit of money, but still it was a case of just how I was trying to lose less money than I had been before. And then one of the people that I met early on was Bert Sugar, the boxing historian. And he and I got on very, very well. And we would sit at the bar in Vegas and at fights and talk about fights. And this one producer from HBO would hear us talking, and he thought, "Hey, you guys, have a really good thing going. We should actually get you on camera doing that." And for the last couple of years of Bert's life, we did some digital video pieces of he and I previewing the big fights. And that was sort of my foot in the door with HBO. And then I started writing some blogs for HBO. And then about 3 years ago, just transitioned into doing what I do now, which is to interview fighters during fight week and do other kind of video pieces for HBO in the build up to big HBO fights. So apart from the fact that I spent about the first 7 or 8 or 9 years of it actually earning zero money, it's been a pretty fun experience. So I was going to spend about a year doing boxing and then going back to my previous life, and that was 14 years ago. So, and here we still are.
Yes, I can certainly sympathise with that, Kieran. As someone said to me once, the only way to come out of boxing as a millionaire is to come in as a billionaire. So, you mentioned Bert Sugar there. You mentioned the interviews you've done. You've interviewed quite a few of the great characters of the game, the loquacious Bernard Hopkins, the expletive-laden Sergio Mora recently. Who are some of the guys, the more notable characters that have stood out for you?
I think I actually really enjoyed interviewing Anthony Joshua the other week, because I was actually really struck by what a good interview he was, about the way he sits and thinks about his answers and then gives you real answers instead of just cookie-cutter responses. And I really enjoyed that. But I think probably still, and I enjoyed going to Russia. HBO sent me to Ekaterinburg to be on the broadcast and interview Sergey Kovalev and Isaac Chilemba after their fight. And that was an amazing experience. And both those guys were interesting. But I think probably my best was when I was still with ESPN and they sent me to go talk to Mike Tyson on camera about pigeons, right? Because as everyone knows, Mike Tyson started, you know, he had pigeons, and he's still very into pigeons, and he had pigeons as a kid, and it was after his local bullies like killed some of his pigeons that turned him into this, you know, the fighter that he became. And I think basically ESPN sort of probably had a spreadsheet. Who do we have who can talk about animals and talk about boxing? And they went down, and I was the only guy who met in the middle, you know. And so they sent me to talk to Tyson. And it was kind of interesting because I had these pages of questions. You know, we were going to talk about pigeons because he had a show about pigeons, is why I was talking to him about that. And then I was going to segue into boxing. I had all these questions, and I said to him, you know, so, you know, what was it like, man? You're 20 years old and you're the heavyweight champion of the world. And he just goes, I don't know. I'm like, really? You don't know? And he goes, you know, I did horrible things when I was a boxer, and I prefer not to think about them, so I don't want to talk about that period of my life, which was like 10 pages of questions. and that's when the interview got great, because he's not an educated man, but he's not a stupid man either. And so I just threw those questions away, and we just started talking about stuff. It was during the Arab Spring. So, you know, and he's a Muslim. So I started to ask him about that, and he was talking about that, and he was being very open about himself and you know, discussing himself and talking mostly about his failures. And it was great. And it turned into about a 60 to 90-minute interview. I can't remember exactly how long we went. And I almost got him to cry twice. And it was, yeah, I think that was probably my favorite interview and the most interesting one that I've done in boxing.
Excellent stuff. We've got Kieran Mulvaney on the line, everybody. Go and follow him on Twitter at Kieran Mulvaney. We've got him till 8:30. So as I said at the top of the hour there, if you have any questions, get them into me on Twitter and I'll ask them to Kieran before he goes. Just before we open it up to the panel, Kieran, just want to drop a very small question onto you here. 2017 has been a great year for boxing, but how do you think, do you think it's in good health? Do you think it's in poor health? Are you optimistic about the future?
Boy, it's all about grading on the curve, isn't it, really? It's funny because last year, so many people were in complete despair about the sport because it wasn't a great year. And really, I think up until now, everything post-Mayweather-Pacquiao was pretty grim, right? It's not, at least here in the United States, it's not as big a sport as it was, and it's not even close to being a major sport. If you accept it within those confines, I think it's, at the moment, it's doing relatively well. But it's going to have ups and downs. And at the end of the day, it all depends on the good fights being made. What I think is interesting is that as the media landscape just becomes fractured, I think that raises some interesting possibilities for boxing, for relative niche sports to do very well and to cater very much specifically to their base. You know, and to have programming that people can view primarily online and don't necessarily have to, you know, watch on their TV or whatever. But at the same time, look, I was at Wembley the other week, and it's very, very hard to argue that boxing is not in good shape after you've been in a stadium with 90,000 people cheering on one of probably the greatest heavyweight title fight in 25 years. So yeah. I'm still a little bit buzzed from that. So at the moment, it's very interesting. It feels like there's a different levels of success right now. And the US, it's doing relatively well as a niche sport. It feels to me that it's much, much bigger in the UK and certainly in some other places, that it's on the verge of, you know, it's maybe going through one of its golden eras a little bit, I think, in the UK at the moment. And you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong. So I think it really depends on where you are. But 2017 is certainly better than 2016. I think probably a lot of money has been lost on trying to bet one way or the other on what boxing's future is going to be. But so far this year, at least, it's been good.
Yep, completely agree with that. Let's open up the floor then. One of our two American contributors on the line, actually. First of all, Donnie Baseball. Donnie, the floor is yours.
Wow. Okay. So I guess I was just wondering, first of all, what was the first fight that you actually covered for when I know you said you were writing the book in Vegas and stuff, but when did you actually transition into the covering of the sport, like going to fights and things like that? How did that transpire?
So right from the beginning, I was able to get credentialed to fights, and that was because, you know, I'd published books in a completely different field, of course, but I was at least able to say, hey, I'm actually a real writer. And look, here are some books. I was giving out some of my books as very, very expensive business cards to convince people that I was serious. And so I got credentialed very early on. And the first fight that I was credentialed for was the De La Hoya Mosley rematch in 2003, September 2003.
That was a good first fight to get credentials to.
Yeah, not too bad, eh? I mean, they stuck me up in the bleachers, but I didn't care. So those were the first. So it was about 2003 into the summer of 2004 that I was doing the book research, and I think the first fight that I was actually covering as a real ringside reporter for Reuters, it would have been, was a Diego Corrales fight, and he missed weight, which was kind of ironic because it was after Jose Luis Castillo had missed weight for one of their matches. And I can't even, it might have been Joel Casamayor, I'm not entirely sure, which would have been around 2004, 2005. So something like that was the first fight that I actually, covered and had to write something on deadline for.
Now, there is a totally different experience, I think. I've sat ringside for a couple of fights when, you're actually up there right up close and personal and seeing the action and things like that. I know that your former colleague at ESPN, Dan Rayfield, said that he was hooked on the sport when he was covering a fight in, I think it was upstate New York, and someone spattered his score sheet with blood. Right. And yeah, so I mean, was that a new experience for you? I mean, was that I mean, if you could talk about maybe the how that maybe changed the experience of boxing as a fan and as a journalist.
The first thing I remember this, I'd forgotten about this until just now, was I remember thinking when I first got credentialed to be, even if they were up in the bleachers, I always associated watching boxing with drinking beer, right? And I was like, how am I going to watch a fight without drinking beer? Because you're not allowed to drink beer in the media. So, but it's different because, and as you know, it can be really different, right? Watching a fight from, say, the first or second media row and then the 8th or 9th even. And when I did the Kovalev Chilemba fight, it was actually on the apron, and that's a whole different experience too. But I think for me, what's interesting is that you have to watch the fight. You don't have any commentary to help you along. You really have to pay attention. And I think the other big difference is you can almost feel the impact of the punches that you can't so much necessarily on TV, right? You can sometimes get more of a sense of, oh, that punch really hurt him, because you can hear, almost feel that punch land, and you can perhaps get a bit more of a wide picture sense of how somebody responds and reacts to being hit by a particular punch. So I mean, I found, I don't know about you, but I found that you have to pay a lot more attention, and perhaps you learn a bit more that way. Although the one thing I will say is there was a period where Wayne McCulloch was doing ringside writing for Ring magazine. And Wayne and I were friends, and the folks who did credentials at the time would always try to put the two of us together. And this was after I'd been watching fights ringside for a few years, and I thought I knew what was going on, right? You think you've watched a few fights and you know stuff. There's nothing quite like sitting ringside with a professional fighter who sees things way, way, way before you ever will. And just subtle little nuances like, oh, look at the way he's lifting his leg when he's doing that. Look at the way he's moving just to cut off the ring that little bit more. And that sitting next to Wayne for a few fights helped me learn to try to anticipate what was going to happen, as well as just watching what had happened already.
And then one other thing I was just going to ask too is you talked about how when you first went out to Vegas and started working on your book, as you said, to recharge the batteries, to approach a totally different subject, that you quickly became friends with Bert Sugar, who now I actually have met Bert a couple of times later in his life. And of course, I think the any requisite question to be asked to anybody who's had contact with Bert, what's your favorite Bert Sugar story? Because I think that there's like 1,000 stories you could probably have. What's your number one?
Oh man, I don't know. I think, the fact that Bert would tell the same joke over and over again as if it was the first time he'd ever told it and the first time he'd ever heard it was always entertaining. Gosh, I don't know. I do remember
on the spot with that one. I know that that's a difficult one. When you know somebody for that long, it's hard to just think of one exact, specific.
Yeah, I don't know. I do. I think perhaps my favorite moment is just, it's not even an anecdote so much. It's just a moment that one of the videos that we shot, might have been the last one that we did almost. They set us up poolside at the MGM. It was about 10 a.m. It was before Shane Mosley against, I'm not sure who. Might have been Floyd. And it, you know, it was 10 a.m. It was already hot. It was Vegas, and we were set up, and they'd already set us up with Bloody Marys to drink on camera because that was the best way to make Bert happy. And yeah, and and there we were, dressed, Bert in his fedora and his jacket, and me in my blazer and sports shirt, sweltering on like beach chairs poolside at the MGM Grand, drinking Bloody Marys and discussing the career of Shane Mosley. That was a pretty special moment.
Thanks very much, Donna. Yeah, just before I bring Dave Lowe back in, talking about blood on the shirt at ringside there, Kieran, a story I've told before. I remember being ringside once and a Hungarian journeyman took a body shot, and he must have had his dinner too close to the fight, I think, because he proceeded to lean over the ropes and completely empty his guts all over everybody at ringside. It was bouncing off the apron. So.
No way. Oh,
yeah. They hoovered it back up again, and the referee said, right, come on, and chucked him back out for the last 3 rounds.
Did he? Wow.
Yep. So there you go. You might end up with a bit of puke over you at some point, but hey to Dave Loback. Have you ever had any puke over you at ringside now?
I've never been quite close enough for that to happen, but Donnie actually kind of stole my question a little bit. I was going to ask about Bert Sugar as well. I mean, you've obviously interviewed a bunch. Boxing personalities are always colorful, and you've interviewed plenty of them, but Bert Sugar himself, even though he was a journalist, is a very colorful interview. Do you view him as like a mentor, or how did he shape you as a boxing fan? I mean, from what I've heard from you, you weren't necessarily a hardcore boxing fan when you got into things, and then you kind of hooked up with him. How exactly did he help shape you as a boxing fan or as a human?
Yeah, no, I think I do regard him as a mentor, especially in the field of boxing, and he instantly took a liking to me because, you know, he sat down with me. He was one of the guys I gave a copy of you know, some of my books to, and I remember very early on he sat down with me and he goes, "You know why I like you, Kieran?" He goes, "You drink." He goes, he goes, "Far too many of these young kids, they come and they're always looking at their laptops, and they don't realize that good journalism is sitting in bars and getting to meet people." And you know, he was very good, obviously, even though he could be a little bit elastic with the truth, you know, in pursuit of a good story. Nonetheless, I learned a lot of good boxing history from him. And, you know, the thing I liked about Bert is he never took himself very seriously. And I always think that's a very good, and I try not to myself. And I think that's always a very good philosophy generally, whether you're in boxing or whether you're in anything else. And, you know, he was always having a good time. And when he wasn't around, I really missed him, because just hanging out with Bert was a real highlight, not least because, yeah, he did. He had a good time. He laughed at himself, and he laughed as well as at his own jokes. He definitely was quite happy to be the butt of his own jokes, you know?
Thank you. Also, as HBO actually describes you, you're a boxing insider sort of for them. Are you at all concerned about the trend for boxing on HBO? I mean, it seems like the budget has decreased. It seems like the cards are not necessarily, I mean, some of this is obviously not HBO's fault, but the cards are not really delivering as much as they have in the past. Are you concerned about the way boxing is moving on HBO as a channel network?
Again, I think that this is probably one of those, you know, like I was saying, in 2016, the state of boxing seemed awful, and in 2017, everyone's very excited about it. My feeling is that it's just one of those kind of ebbs and flows a little bit, in the same way that, like, a couple of years ago, there was a lot of talk about how Showtime boxing was doing terribly, and now it's doing very well. There are some broader corporate issues that are kind of affecting the HBO budget and the HBO approach at the moment, and hopefully they'll all get somewhat resolved. There still seems to be a commitment within the company And that's the important thing. I think that, you know, there are still people who do subscribe to HBO for its boxing. Peter Nelson is respected and popular within the company. So that's important. You know, I think it has been, we're in this strange situation where some of the rivalries and some of the fights and some of the fighters that we've had are all kind of getting to the stage where they want to be pay-per-view fighters all at the same time. And so I think we'd all acknowledge that there have probably been too many pay-per-view. We've gotten away from having a lot of fights on pay-per-view. And this year there have been quite a few. You know, hopefully there'll only be a couple more. You know, Kovalev Ward, obviously, which is a fight that we all want to see. Golovkin Canelo, which obviously has to be on pay-per-view. And then hopefully we'll be able to have a lot more on HBO. It'll be probably a fairly quiet summer, as it often is, and with a bit of luck, it'll be big again in the fall. But yeah, it's ebbs and flows at the moment. I can't pretend to be really, you know, on the inside on a lot of the machinations that are taking place, but I do like to think, based on what I've heard, somewhat depending on what some of these, how these corporate issues become resolved. As you may know, HBO's parent company is in a big merger talks, which sort of affect the budget, I think, to some extent. That hopefully 2018 will be back and strong again, but we'll just have to see.
How much do like business planning depend on who wins and who loses? It's like who's the most marketable guy and that sort of thing.
How do you mean? No, not quite sure I quite follow the question.
Like, well, would HBO, like, say Kovalev is seen as somewhat of a more marketable fighter than Andre Ward. If he were to win the rematch in impressive fashion, you think that would make any difference at all as to how HBO would approach their boxing programming?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Look, sometimes you luck out, right? In as much as, you know, I think as with any individual sport as opposed to team sport, you very much want to have marketable athletes. I think boxing, like any one-on-one sport, really rises and falls on the strength of the characters that it has. You know, there are swings and roundabouts. I mean, different guys are marketable in different ways and popular in some other different ways. I think the big issue with Andre is the degree to which he's committed to it. You often feel as if he might win and then decide that he doesn't need to fight again, right? But it's really cliched, and this is going to sound like complete marketing boiler speak, and I apologize in advance for that, but it really is about the quality of the fights. And I don't think that whoever emerges as a victor in a fight, generally speaking, is as important as the quality of the fight that precedes it. That said, you know, look, I think either way we would have been fine with however Joshua Klitschko ended up, given the way that the fight was. But at the same time, you could certainly argue that for the long-term health of the sport, it's better that the 28-year-old guy wins than the 40-year-old guy or the 41-year-old guy. So I don't know. I genuinely do think it's the quality of the matchup and the quality of the fight that really matters more than anything. I hope that doesn't sound like I'm completely avoiding the question.
No, I think of course not. I think that I actually made the same point of the podcast that we had right before the Joshua Klitschko fight. I was like, you know, for the long-term health of boxing, it's a whole lot better that Joshua wins rather than, you know, we have a heavyweight division where it looks like everybody's just, you know, that these are the best of the leftovers after, you know, legitimately good heavyweight in Vladimir Klitschko has left the sport. So, no, I think that's a fantastic answer. But I'll kick it back to Steve because I know Tommy just came on. So.
Yeah, thanks for that, Donnie. Yeah, we've got Kieran Mulvaney on the line. Kieran's with us for another 5 minutes, and we thank him for his time. The big boss man's on the line, Tommy Allen. Kieran, I hope you haven't been in America for too long, that you can't handle a good, broad Scottish accent anymore.
We'll see.
Because Tommy surely has one of those. Right, Tommy, it's all up to you, sir. Kieran's on the line. What do you want to ask? Tommy?
Does he know he's on mute?
Tommy appears to be on mute. Tommy, do you want to unmute yourself? Okay.
Yeah, well, right. I didn't understand that at all.
That was Tommy sounding good for once. We'll endeavour to get Tommy on if we can for the last 3 or 4 minutes. Before we do, Kieran, you mentioned Canelo against Triple G there. You also mentioned Kovalev against Ward. What are you looking forward to really at the end of the year? Or what would you like to see as well, you know, that hasn't already been signed?
I'd like to see, well, I'm in two minds as to whether Vladimir Klitschko decides whether he wants to retire or do the rematch. Part of me feels that if he were to retire, this would be a wonderful way for him to have gone out. On the other hand, for purely selfish reasons, and because I just think there was so much excitement from that first fight, if he did decide to do the rematch, I would love for that to happen. One fight also that I've been banging the drum for a long time, and I have no idea if it's going to happen. I think to some extent it will depend on how Manny looks against Jeff Horn, is if we get to see Manny Pacquiao against Terence Crawford, perhaps maybe at the very end of this year, perhaps early 2018. I think that would be a fight I'd very, very much like to see. I've been wanting to see that for a long time, and it feels like we might be getting there, but you never know with Bob Arum and to what extent he decides he's going to risk his cash cow.
I mean, well, actually, it's funny you should say that, because I think that the impression that I think a lot of us have is that Arum desperately wants that fight, because obviously, eventually Manny Pacquiao, he's getting up there. He is going to lose eventually. I would assume that, Arum is going to want him to lose to Terence Crawford, right?
Precisely. I think it's the question of, like, if he still looks sensational against Jeff Horn, right? Not that Jeff Horn is necessarily a very good, marker, as it were. But if he looks sensational against Jeff Horn, Bob might feel, this thing has a ways to run yet. If he starts to show some vulnerabilities against Jeff Horn, then I think we'll probably put him in against Terence sooner rather than later. I think you're exactly right about that. At some point, that will happen. It's just a question of when, I think.
Yeah, I think the hope of all the boxing fans is that it happens when it still matters, right?
Exactly.
If Pacquiao looks really good against Jeff Horn, then the Terence Crawford Manny Pacquiao fight will draw a lot of interest, because Manny. I mean, the one thing is that Manny still hasn't lost that speed. He still looks very fast. He just defeated a pound for pound fighter in Tim Bradley, less than a year ago. Yeah, I mean, and then also, of course, on the other side of the network divide, you have Errol Spence versus Keith Thurman as a looming fight. I mean, of course, I think the winner of a potential Manny Pacquiao Terence Crawford fight versus a Errol Spence versus Keith Thurman fight could be a super fight if the networks can work together to maybe make that happen. But I was just curious, what did you think about Errol Spence, being is that's our news from the the past week? I thought that he looked fantastic, and I think he might be one of the future stars of the sport that's going to carry boxing for a while. Do you agree with that?
I think he has tremendous potential, and I thought he would beat Kell Brook, even though I actually have a lot of regard for Kell Brook. Actually, I think he's a not only a very good fighter, but an incredibly brave one as well. Perhaps ultimately, as it will have turned out, too brave for his own good. But I think Spence is a real talent, and not only is he a real talent, but he comports himself really well, right? I mean, he was really respectful towards Kell Brook after that fight. He's the Bronner in many ways, not only in that he's very skilled, but he maximizes his potential, and like I said, he's a great guy outside the ring. It does feel, I completely agree with you, it feels as if ultimately the super fight that is at some point destined to happen, if nothing else gets in the way, is Crawford Spence. And you could feel, if all the cards fall into place, you can absolutely feel that happening. I think Errol Spence is a very real talent. I haven't drawn up any top 10 pound for pound list for myself lately, but I have to figure Errol Spence is on there now. Very, very impressive. What I really liked about it was that Brooks started very well. I better than I thought he was going to in that fight, to be honest with you. And he made Spence have to actually work at it and figure it out. And as a result, Spence had to dig deep and break down an experienced good guy. In the same way that I think Joshua benefited from having to dig deep against Vladimir Klitschko, I think Spence is definitely going to have benefited from the fact that Kell Brook made him work really hard. I think Spence is a very, very real talent. Yes, I agree with you.
We also had, and this is another thing that I think sort of is a very fundamental question as to how you view boxing. I was of the opinion that Kell Brook did not quit. That with a damaged eye socket, it's not like a broken hand, it's not like a broken nose, it's not like a broken jaw. You only have two eyes, that type of a thing. And there was some disagreement among our callers into the podcast and among our panelists as to whether or not Kell Brook quit in that fight. I was just wondering, what's your sort of standard for whether or not a fighter has prematurely packed it in?
Look, and I mean, you say he's only got two eyes. I mean, he's barely got that at the moment. That's the other thing. I could imagine him perhaps even fighting on had what happened to him against Golovkin not happened. But he was very acutely aware of what was at stake. He'd experienced what a broken orbital bone was like. He was told about the dangers of it, and he knew he was behind. No, I mean, I think that, to be honest, I felt even beforehand, I thought Kell Brook was being a little bit too brave. Perhaps he was arguably overly brave by taking on Golovkin in the first place, and then by going from Golovkin into a young stud like Errol Spence was remarkably brave. I'm not the kind of guy. I just have a very, very hard time labeling any person who is brave enough to step between the ropes a quitter under any circumstance. He was just fully aware of what was happening to him. His face was literally broken for the second time in 2 fights, to the extent that you maybe wonder about his future career. And he was smart enough to realize that he'd rather either live to fight another day or live to count his money rather than do so with just one eye. I don't blame him a bit. I mean, he fought hard, he fought bravely, and you know, his face has been broken twice in a row. I mean, how can you call anyone a quitter if he goes in against people who does that to them? So no, I think Kell Brook is one of the braver guys in the sport, to be honest with you.
Kieran, we're very conscious of your time. We want to wrap up. If you've got just 30 seconds, we think we've tracked down Tommy, if that's okay.
Sure.
Tommy, are you there?
I'm here. I was actually listening to the YouTube channel, so I was behind there. I was trying to answer, obviously, but I was actually going to ask Kieran there, but Donnie just asked a question himself. So I'll just put to Kieran. Do you think the weight played any part in it? Nah, I think he's had trouble making the weight in that, obviously, hasn't he?
Well,
seemed to tire maybe.
Yeah, I mean, that was my big concern going into that fight, was the fact that he's been struggling to make 147 at the best of times, and then he went up to 160 and then came down. I thought he looked quite big and strong, though. I thought he looked healthy with it. So, you know, it might have been a bit less of a factor than I thought it was going to be. But, you know, that was one of the reasons why I thought, why is he doing this fight? I understand, I commend him for doing it. But if you've been struggling with 147 and then you go up to 160 against the hardest puncher pound for pound in the sport, arguably, then why boil yourself down to go down to 147? Why not just start over at 154? And at some point, Spence will be ready to come up to you. So yeah. You know, I'm not sure that any of the decisions that he made were, well, commendable, were necessarily in his own interests. I mean, I thought he might look really, really, really spent and weak, and he didn't so much to me. He did look quite big and strong, even though he faded down the stretch there. But I sure hope if he does carry on, he doesn't try to make 147 anymore, because I just wonder what he's doing to himself to do it.
He's got to go to 154, isn't he? But the fights here at 154 are the same fights that I've got for 147 or 160. You know, there's no big fights out there.
He needs to have a couple of not big fights for a while, though, doesn't he?
Yep.
I mean,
I think the whole party, I'm going to 147 with the end game was Amir Khan, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I want to see him like not be in big fights for a little while. If he's going to fight on, I mean, he's been in 2 really, really big fights. Be at a weight that he's comfortable at, get himself back together, you know, maybe fight a couple of guys who maybe aren't murderous punchers and see how his face holds up, and then he can sort of reevaluate from there. Would be my thought if he's going to continue on. I've never heard of somebody have different eye sockets broken in consecutive fights, and I wonder what the long-term viability is right now for him.
Yeah, I remember there was a time when Arturo Gatti literally went through, I mean, probably about 4 or 5 fights that were just consecutive wars where, I mean, he just got totally. And so I remember that his managers and whatever, they gave him a few fights against, I wouldn't say they were soft touches. They were credible fights, but they were fights that that didn't put him as much risk, and they preserved him. And that's why I think he had more to come back and actually give, you know, against Mickey Ward in those 3 classic fights, because I mean they let him kind of get himself back a little bit and sort of rejuvenate himself. Whereas I think, if Kell Brook continues to sort of go from the frying pan to the fire, he's going to be his career is going to be much shorter than he hoped it would be.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's just bizarre to have that kind of damage, whether it's just, I mean, okay, if you get your eye socket broken by Golovkin, fair enough. But like to then get the other eye socket broken in the next fight, it's just, I don't know if it's just incredibly bad luck or whether it points to, you know, some kind of vulnerability there. And if there wasn't a vulnerability there before, there's going to be now. And how is he going to feel about it? Right? How is he's going to know now that he's got a little bit of weakness there. Is he going to be the same guy psychologically? Because you've got to be so brave and committed to be in there in the first place. And if you have just that element of self-doubt, and it would be odd if he didn't have an element of self-doubt now, then, you know, you're going to be able to perform at that very highest level. And that's why, to me, if he is to continue, I would have thought that he just needs to rebuild that confidence against, exactly as you said, a few relatively soft touches, first of all. I'm not sure, you know, that I heard a lot of talk, you know, you mentioned Amir, and it's almost like it's a WWE loser leaves town match at this point, isn't it? And I don't know if it would almost be like gladiator sport at this point, because it's almost like a fight to the death at this point. So I don't know. I wonder if that opportunity's gone or not. But yeah, I like Kel. I think he's seems like a good dude, and he's got an enormous amount of heart. And if he is to continue, yeah, I hope he thinks about the long term and not about just plunging in against another killer.
Excellent stuff. I think that'll do it, guys. Go and follow Kieran at Kieran Mulvaney. We do appreciate you coming on, Kieran. Thanks very much for hearing from you tonight.
Thanks very much. I really appreciate it, and I'd be happy to come back anytime.
Thank you, Kieran.
Excellent stuff.
Thank
you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.
That was Kieran Mulvaney there. It's always good to have a fresh voice, and especially someone with as much authority as he has in the game, and a few good questions from the guys. We eventually got you there, Tommy. We were worried about you there for a while. You were talking to nobody.
I was behind me. I was listening on YouTube, and when I've obviously went to click it on, I've been like, fuck's sake. But got there in the end there.
We got you in the end, Tommy. Right, okay. That was Kieran. We're hitting 20 to 9 here, so we might as well get on with the action from the weekend. Not a great deal of world-class action, it must be said, but there was a show from Canada, from Montreal, in the Bell Centre. Adonis Stevenson laying waste to Andre FONFARA in their rematch in the second round. He knocked FONFARA down in the first round. He looked like he might get him out of there towards the end of that round, but he just managed to see out the round, Mr. FONFARA, but the writing was on the wall. We all saw from that point that he hadn't got it anymore. I think he's done. He's been cracked, Tommy. He's been hit too many times. And once Adonis Stevenson lets go with that left hand, that sharp, fast, heavy left hand, he gets rid of people.
It was a good performance again for Stevenson last night. He looked really sharp. I said it on Twitter last night. I'm a wee bit suspicious of the guy. I think he's faster at 40 than he was, you know, when he was 34, 35. He seems to be improving all the time, doesn't he? But I don't think FONFARA's ever had a great chin, to be honest. So when they landed there, that barrage at the end of the round, I wouldn't have been too bored if I'd have been stopped at that point. I think when they got into the second round, I think Virgil was a good compassionate stoppage, wasn't it? He had no chance of winning the fight. He was just going to get beat up more. So, yep. Hopefully we can just get Stevenson in some good fights. Now, I really want to see the Beterbiev fight. I don't know if they'll take Beterbiev that route, but I'd like to. Stevenson's got to fight. He's got to fight a Warda Kovalev or a Beterbiev or somebody like that, hasn't he?
I wanted to
see this. I didn't want to see this. I remember the likes of Pascal's and the FONFARAs and that in the world.
I wanted to see FONFARA get beat up more for being so freaking stupid. I mean, that was the worst. I mean, I guess the guy always comes in this way. No like in 12 rounds, did he not learn the first time that you probably want to block those left hands? No, yep. I'll just eat him and fall over. I mean, terrible.
He doesn't block punches, Dave. He doesn't block punches.
That was embarrassing. That was terrible. And he sprinted to the ring like, oh, I'm this rejuvenated man. Oh, wait till you see what I got now. No, nothing. It was pathetic.
Hater, let's have a look down Stevenson's record. After he beat Chad Dawson, obviously, and then I'm looking at his next 2 fights or next 3 fights: Tavois Cloud, Tony Bellew, considering what he's gone on to do, and then FONFARA. Okay, I'm happy enough. You know, I'll give him that pass. But after that, Hater, Sokotsky, Sakiobika 2015 version, Tommy Carpensi, Thomas Williams Jr., now the rematch with FONFARA. There's treading water, and then there's this.
This is sinking. This is drowning. I mean, to think they were actually about to fight Shawnee Monahan before they floated that out, and everybody like trashed it so hard. That was what they wanted to do, Shawnee Monahan, and they ended up with this, which is still a shit fight last night. I mean, a rematch for a fight that wasn't remotely close against a guy who just, I mean, he managed to barely stop Chad Dawson in the 10th round after being schooled the entire time. That's a shot, Chad Dawson, by the way. But before that, this is a guy who got freaking sparked in a round by Joe Smith Jr. What's this? This is terrible. This is.
It's just another case. Al Heyman. Just another case of him matching fighters for the sake of matching fighters, isn't it? He's not got a clue about the sport, to be honest. And some of the fights he makes are just fucking. They baffle you, don't they?
It was AIDS.
It was AIDS, says hey to Dave Lowback. He's always hating. Donnie, was it AIDS or was it something more impressive for you?
Well, you know, sometimes. All right, so Stevenson has been an actor for a long time, and I think one of the principal reasons why you could really hate Stevenson and dislike him isn't just because he didn't seem super eager to make the Kovalev fight. Yes, I know that there's a lot of back and forth there, you know, about the Kathy David with Perspit and everything like that. But the point is, that at the end of the day, I mean, you know, he didn't seem super eager to get into that fight or to get into fights with even, you know, if not Kovalev, then other, you know, slightly lesser rivals who at least would pose a threat or whatever. I mean, what about Beterbiev? I mean, what about why was Eliezer Alvarez on the undercard last night? Why wasn't he in the ring with Adonis Stevenson? I mean, he would surely, I think, pose more of a threat than FONFARA would.
He didn't even want to because he was his black brother.
Right, yeah, not Pascal, right, yeah, exactly, because he said he was too close friends with him. I mean, in other words, it seems like every time that there's a semi-legitimate rival, Adonis Stevenson has an excuse not to fight that person. And so, you know, I can understand why it's frustrating. At the same time, though, if he had to be active or something, I mean, cleaning up a rematch of a fight that, you know, maybe he did get knocked down in and things like that, I mean, was probably the best he could do, whatever. He seems to me just to be very content to be inactive. But you know what, though? A lot of the Al Heyman fighters are really inactive because the thing is that Heyman has a lot of mouths to feed, and he doesn't necessarily have all the TV dates to do it. The only guys that stay active are like, you know, I mean, I know that Wilder stays more or less active. Heyman gets him fights pretty frequently or whatever. But for everybody else, it seems like the norm is at least 6 months of inactivity in between fights. And that's, you know, lamentable. It's not the way I'd like, you know, prefer boxing to be. But, you know, even in the post-fight interview, it really frustrated me. He just seemed so okay with, he's like, oh, yeah, next to whatever Al Heyman gives me, I'm fine or whatever. He didn't call anybody out. He's a fighter that I think it's very easy to get frustrated with. And, you know, I just hope his next fight means something. If it's Beterbiev, I don't know whatever it is, but I just hope his next fight means something. That's all I'm going to say.
Joining us on the call now, we have a familiar voice. We haven't heard from him in a few weeks. It's always great to have Kurt K9 Ward. Kurt, who are we going to see Adonis Stevenson in with next? Are they going to step him up? Is he going to force a fight? Is it going to be maybe a Beterbiev or somebody? More than likely, it's going to be this Alvarez, isn't it, on the undercard?
Well, it should have been Joe Smith Jr., shouldn't it? That's what they were talking about. And that's actually a step up for Adonis Stevenson because he's been fighting absolute shit, basically. I mean, he needs to fight someone. He's getting on in age. Let's be fair to him. He looked sensational last night. You know, you can say what you want about FONFARA, but he did a real number on him and he looked great. I mean, his last couple of performances, he looks like he's slipping. I mean, he's 40 years old. He's one of these guys that relies on his reflexes and speed. But last night, he absolutely demolished him. I mean, that left hand, I've said it before, I don't think there's a bigger, you know, one-punch power guy in anywhere in boxing than Adonis Stevenson. When you hit you with that, you're in serious trouble. And he needs to fight one of these guys. And, I mean, he doesn't seem to fight him for whatever reason. You know, you can't, when it's all these different fighters that seem to slip through and, you know, he's the one guy who's always there. So for whatever reason, he seems to be happy fighting these guys, picking up decent paycheck and waiting. But, you know, he's missing out. And, you know, he's a good fighter to watch. You know, I know a lot of people don't like him, you know, for what he's done outside the ring. But in the ring, I think he's a good fighter to watch. He's exciting. He looks for the knockouts. And we just need to see him in those fights. the rematch with FONFARA should have happened straight after the first fight if they was going to do it, because that was when it was still relevant. Since then, FONFARA has been knocked out, and as some was previously mentioned, looked pretty terrible against Pastic Chad Dawson. So, we all expected him to win, but I still think it was still impressive the way he dealt with him. And yeah, Alvarez is another guy who will be a step up, even though you'd like to see him in with someone a bit better.
Tommy, I always like to hit you with these ones, and you love it. So let's put Adonis Stevenson on his pedestal. I think he would get on against these particular fighters. First of all, Alvarez is mandatory. How would Stevenson get on against him?
I could beat him, definitely beat him. I'm not sure if he'd knock him out. Alvarez looks really tough, doesn't he? So I'll say points for Stevenson.
Andre Ward
beats him on points.
Sergei Kovalev
knocks him out.
Alexander Gvozdyk.
Stevenson knocks him out.
Joe Smith Jr.
Stevenson knocks him out. Yep.
Artur Beterbiev.
Beterbiev knocks Stevenson out.
Really?
I can blow him away. I've said it for a long time. Beterbiev is breaking through. I think he's the best fighter. I think he's the best fighter in the world at 175. I think he could possibly beat Ward and Kovalev as well. I'm really, really high on the guy.
Who the fuck has he fought?
He's not fought anybody yet, but that doesn't really matter. He blew Tavares Cloud away in a couple of rounds and that. Cloud was still a decent fighter. That's impressive, but I really like this guy. I think the guy's spot on. I think he's got to be a top fighter.
Yeah, but he already turned down a Stevenson fight. You know this, right?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what's went on there, Donny, but
No. They offered him.
I'm not sure exactly what's went on there, but that's not really a factor in the result either, is it?
No, well, I think it speaks to what he believes his own chances are against Stevenson.
I don't think he fears Adonis Stevenson. I think he'll fight anybody. It's obviously probably good at business of that, hasn't it? Can you explain how he actually avoided them?
Wait, can you explain to me what?
Can you explain how he avoided them? He refused to fight.
They offered the fight to Yvon Michel I think it's called Gym or GYM Promotions or whatever, and Beterbiev is kind of allied with Al Heyman, but it's unclear as to if it's like an advisory agreement, like with Khan or whatever like that. But anyways, they offered the fight to him, and he said, I need a couple of more fights before I'm ready for it. Now, I understand maybe from a business perspective, okay, maybe you can build it up some more if you give Beterbiev some other opponents or whatever and make that fight more interesting. But, the fact remains he had a chance at a world title shot, and he said no to it. He said, I'm not ready. So that was about a year ago or two. But either way, the point is he did knock it back. He said, I'm not ready for it. And now whether that's the whole story, whether it was a business thing or whatever, but that's what he said, and we can only go off of what he said.
Well, I still think he knocks Stevenson out. I think he's one of the tough Russian guys, isn't he? He can punch. I don't think Stevenson's. He's really got the best of chins either. He doesn't get hit often, but I think he's obviously been stopped before. I think Tony Bellew rocked him as well, didn't he? I think Beterbiev will actually blow him to bits.
Kurt, before this fight, obviously Shawnee Monahan was in the frame. Monahan is pretty shit, and Stevenson probably would have decked him. But would you have preferred to have seen Shawnee or Joe Smith Jr. or somebody in the ring as opposed to this FONFARA rematch?
Yeah, they was talking about Joe Smith Jr. in New York, and I was fine with that fight. We saw what Joe Smith's, coming off, obviously stopping Bernard Hopkins, knocking out FONFARA. Why fight FONFARA? You got a guy there who's on a good run, who's knocked out FONFARA in one round. That's the fight to make. It didn't happen, and he settled the score in a rematch where FONFARA gave him a bit of trouble, but it's a rematch no one really cared for because, like I said, it doesn't really matter too much now. And I think, Monahan, another terrible opponent, but a typical Adonis Stevenson opponent. I saw Lucian Bute ringside. I wouldn't be surprised if he somehow got in a fight with Stevenson next as well. But it just seems to be any dangerous fight they're not taking for whatever reason, unless they're just waiting for the biggest fight, maybe trying to get a Andre Ward or something. But it's just not going to happen.
Just looking on the undercard, Dave, but staying within the same sort of region, Elida Alvarez defeating John Pascal on a majority decision. I actually forgot this fight was even taking place. So I looked at it for it on YouTube this morning. Couldn't find the copy, Dave. Forgot all about it till you mentioned it to me. A little bit surprised that Alvarez only won on a majority. How did he look? I mean, because Pascal, to me, I thought he's pretty, if not shot, he's on his way anyway.
Yeah, I expected Pascal to be more shot than he looked last night. I think he probably did enough to earn maybe 4 rounds of the fight, maybe 5, but I think he clearly lost. The rounds he lost bigger than the rounds he won for sure. Problem with Alvarez was he did not fight with enough urgency. He kind of was a little lackadaisical. He would let Pascal get off some sort of winging shots, and most of them wouldn't land clean, but they were landing to the body a little bit. He did get caught clean a few times with some slick right hands, and that's not a good look for somebody who's going to be fighting Adonis Stevenson. He's got to be sharper. He's got to be more urgent. He's got to be on his game. He should have probably gotten rid of Pascal if he was going to be stepping up to Stevenson, but you know. He won. There was no majority decision. That was silly. I don't know who had that draw. Some idiot. But yeah, he clearly won that fight.
Donnie, were you going to get jumping in there?
Yeah, no, so correct me if I'm wrong. So the first time that Kovalev stopped Pascal, it was like a referee stoppage. The second time, did he actually knock him out? Anyone remember?
That's a good question. I can't remember. One of them was when he was taunting the daughter at ringside, wasn't it? And then he went in and he was sort of staggering in the corner.
No, this
Pascal has a fucking very good chin. You know, I mean, I think that he's a really, really tough fighter. It was tough for Eliader Alvarez to knock him out. And the fact that Eliader Alvarez didn't knock him out, I don't think should be a mark against him. Because, you know, I mean, this is a guy who stood up to a lot of hard punches from Kovalev. And even if he ultimately got stopped, I mean, still carried on in the face of some very, very heavy shots from one of the arguably the hardest pound-for-pound punchers in the world. That being said, I don't think Eliader Alvarez is anything special. I think that he is tall for the weight, and I think good reach. And I think that he uses that very effectively. He's sort of very basic, in my opinion, a stand-up, 1-2, you know, jab, 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 feint, jab, you know, right hand or whatever, and he uses those weapons, those that he has, to be very effective. I think he's a limited fighter though, and I don't really rate him, and I don't think that he'll be, you know, the future of the light heavyweight division or anything like that by any means. I think that there is so many other real talents out there with a more varied arsenal of weapons than Eliader Alvarez has, and I know they're going to be setting this up for Stevenson, and I think Stevenson's going to win again. You know, I'm annoyed at the fact that this, you know, arguably looks like to be the next fight, because I can tell you how it ends. Eliader Alvarez is either going to get knocked out or he's going to get outpointed. But I don't think that he's a really good fighter. I think that, you know, I mean, they're setting up, they're trying to make him a star up in Montreal. He's a transplanted, was it Venezuelan or Colombian or whatever? But, you know, he lives up in Montreal now. That's his home. They're trying to do the same thing that they did to some of these other fighters, like Lucien Boutte, a transplanted Romanian who went into Montreal. You know, I mean, they're trying to do the same thing with him, but I don't really think that the talent is there. I just think that what happened last night against Pascal was that he beat up a guy who has really lost a step, and that's my opinion.
To sate your curiosity, as far as the second Kovalev-Pascal fight, they pulled Pascal out after the 6th round after he was taking a beating. So no, he was never really.
Yeah, he's
stopped.
never. I mean, he's got a great chin. I mean, look, and like I said, I'm giving Alvarez credit. I mean, the fact that he didn't knock him spark out is no mark against him. That being said, I just think he's a limited fighter. I don't think he really has what it takes to contend in a loaded light heavyweight division.
Well, this is the point, I think, Kurt, isn't it? Dave mentioned stepping up and stepping down in levels there. Pascal looked bad against Kovalev in the 2 fights, and even to a certain extent against Gonzalez, because he was in against good, solid, physically strong punchers. But when he was in against Alvarez, he maybe looked a little bit better. Maybe, Kurt, it's because he hasn't digressed as much as we think he has, but maybe Alvarez just isn't that good.
Yeah, he's not that good. I mean, but let's be honest. I mean, you can see that they're working towards this fight. Listen, Alvarez has just beaten the two biggest Canadian stars in how long? He's beat Bute, he's beat Pascal. I mean, they've marketed him pretty well. Now he's going to fight Adonis Stevenson, the next guy. So, I mean, you can see what they've worked towards. But I thought Bute was beating him until he left his chin out to dry. And like Dave said, I mean, Pascal, I think he looked better than we expected, but he's well past his best now. He's pretty shot, and he did well in the fight. But Alvarez deserved winner, but in both these fights, he hasn't really impressed. He's the only thing that did was his knockout of Bute that really impressed. But yeah, I mean, it's another easy fight for Stevenson. I don't really rate this Alvarez at all, but maybe Stevenson will show up like he did in his last fight against Williams, where he was taking a lot of clean punches, and Alvarez can punch. That's the only thing. But if he's on yesterday's form, then yeah, Stevenson will look good again, and he'll put on his stupid little crown and cape.
I think the thing with Alvarez is he's one of the fighters. He's not really spectacular in any department, but he's good in all of them. If you look at the fighters and that he's been fighting at a really, really high level, and he's picking the wins up. Obviously, the Chilemba fight, that could have went to me. That could have went either way. I know a lot of people think Chilemba won it, but I think the guys. I wouldn't see his crap or that, but I wouldn't. The guys are saying now that I think he's a wee bit better than maybe we're giving him credit for.
Okay, guys.
Look at all the clean punches. Look at all the clean punches that Pascal landed to his body, right? Now, if Pascal maybe was a bigger puncher or something, those punches maybe would have meant something. But I mean, Pascal literally. I mean, he hit him to the body at least 70 or 80 times. I mean, he hit him a lot to the body. I mean, he just didn't have enough to hurt him. I mean, he's a big guy at the weight, and I don't know. I mean, I don't see greatness in Alvarez. I don't see anything special personally, but that's just me. I mean, I don't know. Other people can feel free to disagree, but I just don't think that he's that good of a fighter, especially when you're in a division that includes Beterbiev, Ward, Kovalev, and maybe even Badu Jack now. I mean, I would put Alvarez at the absolute bottom of that pecking order.
Speaking of,
I agree with you. I don't think he'll beat anybody, but I just think maybe we're underrating him just a wee bit. He's actually a good fighter, to be honest. I think.
Tom,
I think he's beat guys to prove it.
Tommy, speaking of Badu Jack there, we had a couple of questions coming actually about Badu Jack. George Ross has thrown one in. What are Cleverly's chances, Nathan Cleverly, against Badu Jack? George thinks, Tommy, that Cleverly has a high enough work rate to maybe cause Jack a few problems.
Listen, see the thing with Nathan Cleverly, he's got enough talent. He's got enough talent to give pretty much anybody a good fight in their day and beat a lot of guys, but he fights with his heart a lot, doesn't he? I'd like to see Nathan box a bit more, going the back foot and that. But everything's full throttle, full steam ahead, and they end up getting hit with shots and that and getting caught. So if we're talking about talent, that Nathan could definitely win the fight. But I think Badu could turn out to be a wee bit smart. I don't like going against Nathan Cleverly because I've rated him for years. I actually picked him to beat Kovalev. It wasn't one of my smartest predictions, but I'll rate him again this. I think he's a talent. I think he's a more talented fighter than Badu Jack.
Yeah, Kurt, I'll never forgive Nathan for the Bellew rematch, and I am a fan of Jack. I think he's strong. I think he's effective. He's not a spectacular fighter, but he does things well. Chris Blackman threw the same question in, Kurt. Any chances for Cleverly against Badu Jack, do you think?
Personally, no. I think Badu Jack he's still one of the most underrated fighters out there. He keeps proving people wrong. I mean, how many fights have people picked against him and he still does the goods? I mean, he once done his Stevenson. That's another fight that Stevenson probably won't take for whatever reason, or his management won't take. But Cleverly, I mean, yeah, that Bellew fight was really poor, and he seems to be hanging about now with fighting the likes. He's stuck around with a bout now, but I mean, yeah, Cleverly's work rate, he can cause trouble. Jack probably hasn't got the power to obviously do what Kovalev did to him, but I just think Badu Jack will just, what he does, he's pretty basic, but he's solid enough and he sticks to it. He's a big guy at the weight as well. And I just think Cleverly's, he's past his best now. He's just hanging around, trying to get a big payday. But I think Badu Jack will probably be underrated and picked against in this fight again, but he'll come through so strong. I mean, everyone knows how talented James DeGale is, and I think everyone knows Badujak beat him. He obviously beat George Groves as well, and I think he'd be too much for Cleverley, but it won't be, a wipeout or anything. Cleverley will win a few rounds, especially early, but I just think he'll get ground down and lose a points decision.
Over in America on Friday night, Philadelphia, Henry Lundy got a win over Daniel Evangelista Jr. Not really much to write home about there. In Russia, I'm assuming Kurt will keep you on this one, that you would have seen this one. The Russian hammer, Dmitry Kudryashov, lasts for about 4 or 5 rounds, but he managed to punch hard enough to get rid of Mr. Duradola. The WBC Silver Cruiserweight title was on the line. We know what Kudryashov is, Kurt. We know what he isn't. But he's an exciting fighter, and he showed a bit of defensive nuance. He managed to hold on to Duradola. He managed to ride out the shots. He even got the hands up at points as well. He's maybe an improving boxer, but the guy can punch.
Yeah, I think that's it. I mean, listen, he's no fleet of foot guy in there. He's what he's got. He's a big guy, and he's a massive puncher. Again, with Stevenson, he's right up there. I don't care whatever you say. If that guy hits you with that left hook, you're gone. Duradola has an insane chin. He can take a huge amount of punishment. And, in the 5 rounds, he was hurt and dropped, numerous times. And that just tells you the power that guy has. I mean, the first fight, he had Duradola all over the place. And he, blew his load trying to get rid of him. And then he got stopped himself. I think this fight showed, he has learned. He was holding on at times. He takes too many punches. He's a bit slow. He's with the power he's got, he can get rid of anyone in that division. I don't care who they are. He's got the power to knock anyone out, but his technical ability will let him down, and the top guys should probably outbox him and probably stop him. But any fight he has, he's worth watching, because he's either going to knock him out early or he's going to get knocked out.
See that left hook it landed right at the end of the second round. I don't think he recovered for that. Happened right on top of the head, didn't it? I thought he looked good last night as well. Definitely, he had his hands up in that more. He was patient, picked his shots, and when he landed that first left hook, he couldn't miss a left hook after that. And I think the stoppage was all right. I've seen a couple of people kind of complaining about the stoppage and that, but nah, I had no complaints for it last night. Really good.
Dave and Donnie, any of you two want to wax lyrical about your communist brother?
Early stoppage.
Oh, tell us more, Dave.
Nah, I didn't see it. I'm just pissed off.
Dave was watching the UFC last night. Did you watch your man Aldo get fucked, Dave?
No, my man's Holloway. I was
we took him Holloway.
Fuck Brazil.
All right.
I don't know anything about UFC, so we'll move on. Briefly on the undercard, not very much in Russia. Merzliev beat Setul. A win for Gayard Ayatovic. He was based in the UK early on in his career. I think he fought Matthew Macklin, Patrick Maxwell, a few other guys. He was a bit of a prospect. He's had 16-odd losses on his record now, but he got himself a win for the vacant WBC, CIS, and Slovenian Boxing Bureau, CISBB, super middleweight title. I always love a bullshit title, and I am a fan of that one. Let's stick
top 5 with the WBA.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think we could get a ranking with the WBC if we won one of these bullshit titles, Tommy. Right, sticking with the cruiserweights, there's this tournament going on. I think it's the World Boxing Super Series. This, if my knowledge serves me correctly, is the Richard Schaefer Saraland sort of matchup. They're getting together on this one for the Muhammad Ali Trophy. Could be someone else running that, but anyway, there's 3 cruiserweights been announced. IBF champion Murat Gassiev, Maris Bradis, who we recently saw beating Marco Huck, and Polish veteran Krzysztof Wlodarczyk. Lestin Venables has been on, Tommy. He wants to know, we have 3 names down for this 8-man tournament. Who are the other 5 cruiserweights you would like to see? Who would you like to see in this tournament out of the cruisers?
Well, there's obviously one name that everybody's going to want to see. It's a big Ukrainian gold medalist, isn't it? Big Usyk. So he's going to be one. We're going to probably want to go with, who else could we get? We could get Denis Lebedev in there as well, couldn't we?
Yeah.
So who's actually confirmed for again? Marius Bradis, Glowaski. Did you see Gassiev as well?
Yeah.
So I'd go with Bradis, probably. Who else did I say? Lebedev, maybe. I'd throw the
Usyk.
big Russian. I'd throw the big. I'd throw him in there, Steve. I definitely. I'd go with you guys. I like the concept. I thought the Super 6 was absolutely amazing when they done it in the super middleweight. I like the tournaments. I was really gutted a couple of years ago. They were meant to do one at 140 when obviously they had Khan, Alexander, Bradley, Madonna, and all these kind of guys. They were meant to do one there, and it fell through. So I've been looking forward to the cruiserweight one. Sauerland's been wanting to do this for a while, so let's get it on, because there's got to be some vicious knockouts in these fights, isn't there? The cruiserweights are fucking, they're good to watch.
With those guys, there is Donny. I mean, you could even throw Marco Huck if he's not too shot in. Makabu can punch, Kucha can punch, and Yuri Kalenga always brings it as well.
Yep. Well, yes, I think Makabu Machubu also. I mean, I think that really,
that Michael Hunter's no bad at just fought Usyk as well. I'd like to see him in another good fight. He was a year off there. If he had been fitter, he could have run Usyk a bit closer than that, to be honest, because he gassed in that fight.
Yeah, that would be a very good nomination. I think also, to be honest with you, I think at this point, Tony Bellew is at the cash out stage of his career. He probably wants to fight at heavyweight, even though that's not where he really belongs in terms of his weight class. But I think that Tony Bellew would be a worthwhile nomination for a cruiserweight tournament. I think he would do well there. Also, I think that Mike Perez looking good. He didn't fight recently, did he?
No, that fight was off.
No, he's supposed to fight this Saturday night against Tommy McCarthy, Donny, but the fight's been called off for whatever reason.
Nobody knows why.
I heard that McCarthy's manager thought that Perez wouldn't turn up, so he pulled him out. Whether there's any truth to that or not sounds a bit bizarre, if true.
Yeah, so I think Tony Bellew belongs there at that 8-man cruiserweight tournament, and I think that what he showed against Machunu when he knocked him out. I mean, obviously he's got the power at that weight. I think I really think that's the best way for him. I think Bellew belongs in a cruiserweight tournament, but I just think that because the money isn't there really for him to be doing that, he's just never going to fight at that weight, even though that's where he should be fighting.
Yeah, I know that Kane Clark and Joe O'Neill both listen to the show, so if they have any additional information on McCarthy and Perez, then hit me up and I'll read it out. Kurt and then Dave, any cruiserweight you'd like to see in this mix-up? First you, Kurt.
I mean, the names were mentioned. I mean, I think me and Andy spoke about this quite a while ago, about this is the division that it would benefit from a kind of Super 6 or Super 8, because, it might not be the glamour division, or you might not have all these, really good, what people see as like really good boxers, but you're going to get just all action. You're going to get guys who are literally all big, strong. Most of them can punch hard. They're basically old heavyweights from the 70s. That size, and they have the power, and you're going to get fun fights. There's not a lot of tippy tapping about. There's just guys looking for knockouts, and you got Gassiev, Lebedev, Bridis. You mentioned Huck. They're just names of the division, and they're going to be great fights. And I think this is what the cruiserweight division needs, because too many of the champions I think have been kept apart. We need Usyk in there as well, but you just never know until it's sorted. But as Tommy said, the Super 6 was great. I know it seemed kind of a bit too long, and they had the injuries pulling, which stopped the momentum. But in the end, it was worth it, and it was good for the sport. And I think this will be good for the division as well.
Who among all, if you can name all your 8 fighters that you would pick, who would beat Usyk?
Marius Bradis would beat him. I've said it for about a year now that Bradis would beat Usyk. I think Usyk, I'm not going to see he's crap on, but I think he gets vastly overrated by the fans. I don't think he's near the class that people are making him out to be. I think Bradis is the best cruiserweight in the world. I
agree. But if they want to make this tournament 8-person, there are other names we could throw in there. Makabu for sure. I think he's not. I mean, he got starched by Bellew, but he's still a very good fighter. Definitely deserves another shot at making his name. Also, these guys haven't been very active. It seems like this was a long time ago, but they both fought each other. Kalenga, what's his name? Yuri Kalenga, and he's a Frenchman from the Congo. And Dorty Coeur, or I don't know how you say his name. He's the guy who beat Kalenga. That was a great fight between those two. And I think both of them are good top cruiserweights that would make an excellent addition to an 8-man tournament.
What about your boy, the Blackpool Assassin, Dave?
I don't know who that. If he's from Blackpool,
Matty
actually,
Askin.
Mr.
Is it
Matty
Cox?
Askin he just won the British title there a couple of weeks ago.
Here, Tommy, here's a bit left field for you. If there was any light heavyweights who could conceivably move up, heavyweights who could conceivably do him, respect to that.
What did you say? They broke away with the light heavies that could move up or heavies that could move down?
Yes.
Well, I'd go with Kovalev. Obviously, Kovalev's talked about moving to cruiserweight in the past. You've obviously got the likes. The ones that the heavyweight are obvious. You've got the likes of David Tay. You've got Tony Bellew that could move down. Nathan Cleverly's fought at cruiserweight before, even though I don't think he's really a cruiserweight. Who else could we go with? I'm trying to think of some big guys at the way. I don't think Adonis Stevenson or Andre Ward. I don't think they're big enough. They'd be big enough to go up there and hang at that weight against some of these big guys. But maybe Kovalev could do that. I reckon Kovalev could go up. But moving down, I'd go with he or Bellew. I don't know what Fast Eddie Chambers is doing these days. Is he still fighting? I don't know. I've not heard from Eddie for a while. But I quite liked Eddie back in the day.
Give Chris Bird a phone call.
Chris Bird, man, he's what fighting the light heavyweight version, though, isn't he?
That's right. Before we move on to the card on Friday night, which was Box Nation, Frank Warren, Wham Boxing, one of his incarnations. Chris Blackman had put in a comment earlier that I forgot to read out when it comes to the FONFARA Stevenson fight. Chris says, after literally watching the FONFARA Stevenson fight for 5 seconds, I knew what the outcome was going to be. Stevenson displayed great footwork straight away, and FONFARA was plodding forward half asleep. Hopefully now Stevenson faces the winner of Cleverly versus Jack or Ward versus Kovalev. Right. Okay, let's get this up on my screen. Kurt, did you see anything of this card on Friday night? We had Bradley Skeet knocking out Shane Singleton in a good fight. Lee Markham losing to Joe Mullender in a good fight. Boy Jones Jr. knocked out a guy who I reckon I could beat with a 6-week training camp. And there are a few other notable scraps. I'm not joking, Johnny. Donna, you've never seen anything like this guy. Did you see anything of it, Kurt?
Unfortunately, Steve, I have not seen a second of this. It sounded fantastic, though. Fill me in on it.
Well... Look like this is going to be down to me. Now, I will give the props. Skeet against Singleton was a good fight. Singleton buzzed Skeet up, I didn't buzz him up, but he got to him, with good shots, and he had him on the back foot in the first couple of rounds. But Skeet, too big, too strong, punched too hard. Singleton couldn't take the power, and he got knocked down about 2 or 3 times altogether before the referee jumped in. Possibly early. Singleton was thrown at the time, but I think the referee just about got it right because Singleton hadn't been thrown back before the stoppage. Lee Markham against Joe Mullender. This was a bit of a strange fight. I had the fight on in the background with the sound muted because I was tidying up and stuff. And I thought that Markham was Mullender and Mullender was Markham. So I went all the way through the fight thinking that the one guy was the other one. So that's how much of a casual. But fair play to Mullender. And as for this Boy Jones Jr. opponent, Donny, anyone who's listening will probably back me up on this. Andis Didzas. Apparently, he was Latvian, although he looked like he was Indian or Bangladeshi or something to me. But apparently, he was Latvian. 29-year-old, 3 wins, 4 losses. He'd fought Oisin Fagan in the past, had a couple of dodgy wins in Latvia in the gyms. He was awful. He threw a couple of shots. Every time he took a punch, he just went down, Donny. No punch resistance whatsoever. I honestly think that I would be able to have a good go with this guy.
Well, I thought that one of our Twitter questions that we had was interesting. I didn't know if you were tagged on it as well, Steve, so you may not have seen it. But one of our listeners had asked us, he said, since Eggington fought Skeet, who's had the better resume?
Since Eggington fought Skeet? Yeah, well, it's got to be Eggington, hasn't it? I mean, Skeet's sort of been treading water at British title level, whereas Eggington's fought poorly, hasn't he? He's knocked out Frankie Gavin. He beat that guy for the European title. Yes, Eggington, definitely, Tommy.
Yeah, but he's fought poorly.
Eggington's passed him by a mile just now. But I'd actually like to see the rematch now. I think Sam Eggington might beat him now. You've got to remember, Eggington's only 23, he's improving all the time. I'm not a big fan of Skeet. I didn't even watch his fight on Friday, to be honest. He's actually on my banned list. I didn't watch him, and I didn't watch Austin Trout. So I'd like Sam Eggington. I'd like to see him get that rematch. I think Sam would beat him in the rematch.
To be honest, I'm the same with Skeet. I mean, he's literally
Bradley,
visual aids, isn't he? Yeah, he's visual aids. I mean, to be fair, I do rate him. What he does well. And I think I'm not sure how far he can go, but he seems to be improving to me. But when I last seen him, but I just when I used to watch him on Box Nation, they always mentioned Tommy Hearns. It just put me off him, and I just had to switch off, and I've never bothered back since. So when he's in a good fight, I'll give him a chance.
Nah, I can't watch him. Like,
I mean, Eggington's still so young, though. He's only 23 years old. I mean, improvement there.
Yeah, especially considering someone who'd come into the sport expecting to be a journeyman, and he's caught himself a little niche. Barry Hearn seems to be quite fond of him anyway. Donny, don't get running off too quickly. I've got a question for you. After we've asked that question, Dave, I believe you want to talk about Kell Brook and Errol Spence because you weren't on the call last week. Donny, James Bernard, this is our chance to see Broner twitching on the canvas. Boxing may not have failed us yet, Donny.
Wait, oh, I'm sorry. You cut out for like 2 seconds. Are you talking about Broner versus Garcia?
I asked Broner twitching on the canvas, possibly.
Well, I'll tell you one thing. Broner, you can say whatever you want about him, whether you like him, whether you don't, but he does have a very, very good chin. I struggled to see Garcia stopping him just because Garcia usually is very cautious. I mean, even when I know he has a great knockout ratio, but he also doesn't like to really move in until he really knows he has you. And I don't know if their fight will progress to the point where Garcia gets to the point where he's like, okay, I can stop this guy. I could see Garcia decisioning him by a wide points margin. Not sure I could see Garcia knocking him out. I mean, of course it's possible, but Garcia would actually be the one moving up in weight, whereas Broner, well, at least theoretically, would be moving down. I think that 140 is his proper division, but he hasn't made 140 in a while. So, I mean, it's a fight that boxing fans can rejoice about because we can see two names that we know fighting each other, and we always like that. But at the same time, I don't think that that really this is actually a good fight. It kind of reminds me of like a Canelo Chavez type thing. Oh, we got these two big names, and they're fighting each other, and all the boxing fans are going to get excited because we got two names that are fighting each other, and they got past whatever financial issues they needed to get past to make the fight. And so it's exciting for that reason. But is it exciting because I think it's a competitive fight? Not so much.
It's uncompetitive, says Donny. Go ahead, Tommy.
What I was just going to say, is this at 140, yeah?
Supposedly, if AB can get down.
Yeah, 140, yeah.
I think it's going to be set about 142. I don't think Broner will make 140 again. Have they actually came out and said 140, Donny, yeah?
No, yeah. The fight is scheduled to be at 140 pounds. Garcia would be moving up, I believe, from 135, whereas Broner has sort of, shifted between 147 and 140 for the last few fights.
Yeah. I'll be shocked if Broner makes that way. I don't see Mikey stopping. I think Broner's tough, but I think Mikey will beat him wide on points. I
agree with you, Tommy. I think Broner will last the distance as well. Right, hey to Dave. Go or balls deep on Kell Brook against Errol Spence. Quit or not to quit? That is the question.
Yeah, I guess that's the main debate about this fight. Everyone agrees Spence looked excellent and really proved himself. I feel kind of vindicated because way back in 2012, I said, wait till this guy gets into the pros during the Olympics, obviously, when he was getting robbed against that Indian dude. Wait till this guy gets in the pros. He's going to be
what are you talking about?
I remember you in the forum, Dave. You were quite high, Spence. You did say he was going to be good, so you credit for that.
But even so, I mean, I didn't think he was going to be that good. I actually picked Brook to win that fight because of his experience and tighter shots. But the fact is, Brook did quit, and I don't think it's that big of a deal. I mean, it's who he is, and I mean, he's let us know some things about himself by quitting. But I mean, there's nothing in like the boxing rules that say you can't quit. I mean, it's just something that you do to protect yourself or not. He chose to do it. I'm not going to like harp on him for it or like shit on him. I've never been a big Brook fan, but I mean, I can't say that a lot of other guys probably would have quit in that situation as well. Some wouldn't have, obviously. Some of the all-time greats have shown us that they can fight through that sort of thing. Brooke is obviously not one of them. We never thought he was. So, I mean, it's not that big a deal. He did quit, but, I mean, so what?
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, go ahead, Kurt.
Yeah, I mean, some people get offended and they seem to take it personally as if you're attacking the guy. I mean, look, Cal Brook did quit. We're not saying that we wouldn't have done the same. We're not saying we're harder than Cal Brook, but he did quit. Whenever a fighter goes down to one knee, when the guy is just walking towards him and no punches are even landing, he quits. I mean, I think someone mentioned it last week that if Cal Brook was winning the fight, he wouldn't have quit. The fact is, I think from round 7 onwards, Errol Spence was basically whooping his ass, and his eye was badly hurt. He remembered what happened in the Golovkin fight. You know, in that fight, Dominic Ingle saved him basically from getting a bad injury, I think. And in this fight, he didn't have anyone to throw the towel in, so he quit. I mean, it's just, you know, I can't knock him. You know, he gave everything he had. I think he was running on empty. He didn't have much left, and I think he knew that the tide has turned, and Spence was just too young, too fresh. He was just steamrolling him at that point, and he had nothing left. And you know, if he was ahead, maybe he would have tried to hold on or try and get through those last 4 minutes, whatever was left. But he had nothing left. It's just to see him go down like that in front of, you know, his hometown fans. You know, it's a hard thing, and I don't know how he's going to really come back from that. To be fair to him, but you know, he gave his all. Errol Spence, I think, looked sloppy for the most part of the fight, but in, you know, like I said, in the second half of that fight, he really turned it on, and he looked really impressive. And once he smelled blood, he just wouldn't let Brooke go. I mean, Brooke, he did quit the fight, but you know, it's going to be hard for him. But I think he could have carried on. I mean, I think there was times when the ref might have stopped it. Maybe that's what Brooke was hoping for. And when the ref didn't stop it, he just didn't want no more. You could see that as Spence was coming over for another assault, he just said, no, I just can't take it. And, you know, as he was on one knee, you know, he was looking directly at his partner and his dad. And I think he said, I can't see or something. And, you know, he didn't want no more, which, you know, that's why it is. But he's going to have to, he'll be disappointed in himself, I'm sure. But he did give his all in the fight. So you can't knock the guy.
Thanks for that, Kurt. Always good to hear your opinions. A few people have been asking about Andy. What's happened to him? There were calls for his sacking last week, so Andy is serving a suspended sentence at the moment. He may or may not return. We shall see. If you want to see Andy back, then tweet at us with "Bring Andy back," and we'll see if it's a popular decision, Donna.
Wait, what's that?
We'll see if it's a popular decision to bring him back.
Yeah, give your opinions. Definitely.
McKetch has tweeted me. He says, if Bellew campaigns at heavyweight and drops the WBC cruiserweight belt, will we see Bradis versus the Russian Hammer? Well, Bradis is high up in the WBC rankings, obviously, as a mandatory position. The Russian Hammer won the WBC silver cruiserweight title last night. So I hope so, McKetch. I would love to see that fight myself. Right, moving on. Before we go to Rob Kelly, we've got the main man on the line. Russ, you're live on the Nuthouse.
Right.
Not too bad. Russ, tell me this, right? David Hay and Shane McGuigan have split up. What's all that about?
I don't know, mate. I'm shocked, mate. To be honest, but how can unless he's blaming him for pulling earlier, but surely they would have spoke to him at the end of the 5th or 6th round, wouldn't he? Or they would have known before the fight that he was injured, wouldn't he?
Yeah, and just regarding Bellew, what are these rumours about Bellew versus Andre Ward for November? Any credence in that?
I heard a rumour a few months ago, actually, that they were looking to put Eddie. In fact, Eddie, if you go on IFL, he mentions about Ward and Bellew, you know, jokingly. You know how Eddie does? He likes to drop hints and, you know, little, they like whisper, don't they, and stuff like that. And I also heard it off somebody that he thinks it's a good fight, Ward and Bellew, and because they've been in Creed together. And then I saw this with offering Adonis Stevenson to move up. And then I was speaking to somebody last night, and I thought, you know what, I'll put it past him. Would the chaps put it past Eddie putting that out? You know, a WBC, you know, Ward and Bellew, you don't know, do you?
He's creating a pantomime at the moment, Russ.
Yeah, so on, isn't it? WWF, isn't it, Eddie? But,
Hey, Russ.
yeah, Go on, sorry,
Ross,
mate,
tell me this, right? You smell a rat when it comes to refereeing. You've laid out some statistics to me. Now, back in the day, Mickey Van, I think, refereed about 14 or 15 of Ricky Hatton's WBU title fights. Now, you've done the mathematics here, and Michael Griffin has refereed 10 of Adonis Stevenson's fights.
Yeah, 10 out of his title fights. Yeah. You know, he's got that minor fight, so he's nearly done them all. Him and Marlon Wright, he's done 6. Yeah. And they're the Canadian-based guys, aren't they, mainly? And it makes you wonder if anything does happen. You know, like the Butte fight. Remember Butte against Andrade?
Yeah.
Andrade dropped him, didn't he? And he gave, 19 seconds, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
And the cornerman attacked him, didn't he?
Yeah, that was Otis Grant's brother, Howard Grant, wasn't it? He went absolutely mad.
Yeah, he went berserk, didn't he? Yeah, and I don't agree with that because Butte were out on his feet, but they give him benefit of doubt, didn't they? And he was supposed to have served us never to be work again with the IBF, wasn't he, Marlon Wright? But when Butte had his comeback fight after. When it Carl Froch I can't remember a fight after he refereed it. But in another country, didn't he go to Romania and fight? And he was referee, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's right.
You know, it's amazing what goes on in it. And, you know what I mean, with referees and that. And IBF.
You haven't laid in on Eddie yet. Tell me about this next generation that Sky are putting on. 5 of them are over 30, aren't they?
I've been looking at internet. Obviously, I speak to that inbox, and I've got some of my friends up there. And I'm looking at these. You know, Phil Jeffries, Tony Jeffries, have got a bronze medal, didn't he? He's got about 8-1 or something. He's 8 in a draw, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's out in LA now, isn't he? Yeah.
Him and the kid. The Sutherland, you know, at the Olympics, didn't they got bronze medals in them,
Yeah, Sutherland lost to James DeGale.
Yeah, all that here, one day. Well, anyway, to cut a long story short, Eddie's got this next generation show on, and it's supposed to be, you know, the next big prospect. But, you know, 5 of them are over 30-year-old. Now, but Phil's looking to put on Glenn Foote, Tommy Ward and Martin Ward in English, British and European fights, and obviously there's Dennis Woodland Commonwealth title fight. You've got the Sky don't want to know, all Box Nation. Now, you tell me what's going on. What are they serving up? What they're serving up? You've got 4 good fights there. It's like a Cold War, isn't it? Anybody else is not. They're not getting in on acts, are they? It's all in house. You know, like you get McCracken's giving fighters from EIS to match them. Everybody in boxing knows that. And then what Tony Sims doesn't have, Max McCracken and Peter Sims have, and then what they don't have, Gallagher and Colwell have. You see where I'm coming from now? Nobody else is getting a look in. So young fighters, say for instance, Phil Jeffries has got them young kids up there. He's got that Lewis Ritson, who everybody's raving about, and Eddie's raving about him as well, let me tell you, because I've heard back. Now, if Lewis Ritson don't get he's going to fight Robbie Barrett, innit? It's going to Perthbridge next Tuesday with Steffi Bull. Now, Lewis Ritson, I know, will beat him, but then Steffi will want to get Andy Townend in for a fight with Lewis Ritson, that's what I think. Now, Lewis Ritson, will he stop with Phil if he has a couple of defences and gets on Sky against Townend? Because don't forget, Eddie thinks far ahead, doesn't he? He thinks if I'm just looking at this situation where Lewis Ritson, mandatory for British lightweight, he's going to fight Robbie Barrett, who'll beat Cardo. Now, he'll beat Barrett, then he'll be Townend who'll be moved in, Steffi's guy. And that'll be a war, Townend and Ritson. But I think Ritson might have too much of him, or he might not. He'll go on Sky, he'll leave Jaffa him, I think. That's what I think. Because he's a no TV deal as a Jaffa, but yet he's had him from the beginning. And he's paid fortunes out and got money invested in him. That's what's wrong with boxing at the moment in this country. It's the only way is Eduardo. Cowie, innit?
Yeah.
That's what I think anyway, and I think something needs to be done about it, but nobody's doing anything, nobody's saying anything, and I don't know, I mean, getting back to that, what you're on about with cruiserweights, why don't Bellew fight Ertz? He's screaming for a fight, isn't he? and Brady.
Good fight, wouldn't it?
Screaming for him.
Yeah. Good
I
fight.
mean, I've heard Bellew has been given a list of what fights he can scream out for. Now we're screaming for Adonis Stevenson at £200 because he'd have an advantage there. He wants Hay. If Hay wants to play Adonis Stevenson fight, if he don't get this Adonis Stevenson fight, he needs to do what Bernard Hopkins used to do: go out and pick them couple $100,000 fights. So you're not going to get the what was the guy Hopkins for? And they threw the flag on the floor. What were he called?
Trinidad.
Hey?
Wasn't it the Trinidad fight?
Yeah, Trinidad. Hopkins couldn't get the Trinidad over De La Hoya fights all the time, and they were little guys moving it, weren't they, really? Bellew needs to go fight some people at his own division instead of picking on light heavyweight or heavyweights, because they're too busy trying to make pantomime fights. Go fight people in your own division. If Bellew, and I've spoken to her before, I'm a cruiserweight. Well, go and fight a cruiserweight. I'm not talking that Macabre or that Masterneck or whatever. They're garbage. Go fight, a proper cruiserweight like Ersk or that Brady. Don't say you're an heavyweight, or I'm 6'3", I'm an heavyweight, because you're going to get Parker, Wilder, Joshua, Vladimir, or A. All of a sudden he's an heavyweight. But when it suits him, I'm a cruiserweight, I want to fight Stevenson, because still on an edge. Stick in your lane and go fight somebody. So many people wanted to. We have weight divisions for a reason. Do you know what? Sooner or later, these pantomimes, someone's going to give and someone's going to get hurt, Steve. I'm telling you. I can see it coming. Look at Kell Brook. He's had 2 fights. He got smashed to pieces by Golovkin. He's not a middleweight. Kell's a beast. I wonder if he thinks he's a beast now. Because that Golovkin, he opened all his face up, didn't he? And all the rest are just going to pick him off now, aren't they? And he'll come back, Kell. Because what's he going to do, Kell Brook, if he don't box? He's either going to be a pundit, is he? He's not going to be a brain surgeon either, is he? You know what I mean? People need to stick in the divisions, I think. But it's pantomime stuff what we've got at the moment. Pantomimes. But I do feel sorry for Shane McGuigan.
Russ feels sorry for Shane McGuigan. Right, Russ, we're going to move on. I'll bring you back in at the end, okay?
All right, mate. You take care, pal.
Cheers, Russ.
Goodbye.
Big Russ there, everybody. Right, Rob's on the call. Rob Kelly, it's always good to hear from you. How are you this evening?
All right, lads. Flying it. What's the crack? Good man, Russ. Good to hear Russ.
Yes, good man. We always love a bit of Russ on this pod. We had not too much boxing from the weekend, Rob, so the floor is yours, whatever you want to speak about.
No, I saw the. I just wanted to mention what Russ was talking about there with Bellew going up and campaigning at heavyweight. Like, I mean, I think that Ward fight could, if Bellew couldn't somehow manage to get his hands on a trinket in the heavyweight division, I think Ward would jump to move to heavyweight to fight Tony Bellew. I think with Roy Jones being a big influence on his career, and what Roy did picking Ruiz as the kind of the heavyweight he was going to take some silver from, I think that Ward would jump at the chance to fight Tony Bellew. But I don't think Tony Bellew was good enough to beat any heavyweight champion. He beat up a one-legged David Hay. I mean, I was drunk in the pub watching on my phone. I didn't really cop the injury as much. The place was jammed, and I was rooting for him. But yeah, he's not going to beat Joseph Parker. Like, Joseph Parker is a big heavyweight, and as bad as he is compared to Joshua Fury and Klitschko and Wilder, even, he's better than Tony Bellew. Who's Tony Bellew beating at heavyweight that he's a heavyweight? Now, come on. I think Russ is right. It has to stop, and this weight jumping is going to get somebody. And the lucky that the Canelo shot with Cam wasn't a drubbing, that it was a clean knockout, because that was too big of a jump too. I think he's right. Someone is going to get hurt. But just to get back to the stuff at the weekend, this FONFARA Stevenson fight kind of went like I thought it would go. I knew Stevenson was going to blow him away. I don't know what it is with how FONFARA is after negotiating a shot at a rematch in a fight that wasn't competitive the first time. He hasn't done shit since then, apart from beat up a drained Chavez, which was nice to see Chavez. But Chavez quit that night too, like, you know what I mean? So, like, and then he gets blasted away by Joe Smith, and somehow he's in the pole position for the heavyweight after beating Chad Dawson, who hasn't looked good in 5 years. Like, so funny stuff goes on in boxing. Even though we're on a bit of a hot streak, we still have to call out the nonsense when we see it. And FONFARA is never going to be in the fight. Like, Stevenson's style, I thought, was extremely crude. I think 39, he's there for the money. You know what I mean? He just threw that left hand, he knew he was going to get through on it. Didn't do anything different, didn't move his head. I know the fight didn't last that long, but I didn't think FONFARA had anything to offer in that fight. Like, it was just a bit of a non-event. Pascal, like, could care less about at this stage. I mean, has Pascal beaten anybody, like, once he's gone up against an A-level guy ever? Has he ever beaten an A-level guy? Like, Froch beat him, close fight. B-Hop beat him twice. I don't care what. The first result was a joke, even though he did get two knocks.
He took Chad Dawson's, though, to be fair.
Yeah, Chad Dawson, I suppose. But, like, Chad Dawson is a bit of an enigma, isn't it? You don't know really which Chad Dawson is going to turn up anytime he fights. Like, he looked good, I suppose, against B-Hop. I think that a bit of a grudge in the second fight. I think that, like, I mean, that fight and Kovalev are probably the two fights where you say B-Hop got a definitive beating, like, over the, you know what I mean, over in his career. Like, I think, yeah, so that was a good moment for Dawson. But he is a bit of an enigma. Like, I'm excited to see Garcia and Broner. I think that's a great fight. Like, and I've been hearing that it's at 140 or there's no fight. Like, they're going to do something similar to what Chavez did, what they did with Chavez, and if he misses the weight that the fight's offer, that there's like heavy fines. Like, so, but again, I don't know if Broner can make 140, even though that's probably his best weight. Like, but I see that fight kind of going the way everybody else sees. I think Mikey Garcia puts a clinic on Broner. I don't think Broner can touch Mikey Garcia because his feet are not good enough. And I don't know if he might stop him, but I think he could drop him several times along the way. I think it could be like, even with, I know they've got different styles, but when Mikey fought Salido, the accuracy of his shots is just, he just seems to never miss the target. It's like he's got laser sight, everything off the jab, right hand straight down the pipe. I could see him putting a beating on Broner, to be honest with you. But
yeah, like Rob, like the boxing skills mixed with the accuracy, punctuated by the power, is going to make Broner just go into a shell and think, I don't want any of this. Like,
yeah, and I think Mikey. I would have loved to see the Mikey versus Lomachenko fight. That was the only fight. Like, that was like a dream super fight coming, but that looks like it's not going. And I think Mikey probably might be too big for Lomachenko. But I would have loved to see the clash of styles and two of the most skilled guys in the sport going at each other. So, but yeah, no. That's really it. Like, for the weekend, I didn't get to see much else. Like, but yeah.
No problem, Rob. I noticed Gary Hyde was Facebook messaging a couple of days ago. He said there's a whole lot of dirt, filth, and corruption going to be exposed. Goodness knows what he's talking about.
All right, is he talking about in the Irish scene, or is he talking about like in?
He didn't elaborate. That's all he put. Very enigmatic, and a few people are asking him to elaborate. It could be something to do with him and his fighters. I know there's a lot of StubHub talk going on at the moment. I mean, let's be honest, Rob. In this sport, it could be about figuring 50 different things.
Yeah, I mean, even though we're getting on, as I keep mentioning, like, we're on a bit of a hot streak, there's still so much other stuff that's going wrong, like the monopolies, the hype jobs, you know what I mean? I actually just wanted to go back to Brook v. Spence there, and one of the guys mentioned Spence was ragging in the first half of the fight. I thought that too, like, and when I first watched it, I was kind of putting it down to Brook just being good at 147, but I was looking at an interview with Spence during the week on Sway's Universe or something, and he said that the inactivity for the 9 months was killing him, and his timing was off in the first half of the fight. So maybe we haven't seen the best of Spence yet either.
Excellent stuff, Rob. Stay on the call for as long as you're able to.
Will do.
Cheers. Right, hey to Dave.
Sorry, I don't mean to jump.
Yes.
Can we bring back Andy? #, bring back our Andy. I'm not feeling comfortable on the pod without Andy on it. You know what I mean? There's no burp.
Doesn't feel right, does it?
There's no burping. There's no, you know what I mean? We need Andy back. Like, let's get Andy back.
Yeah. Consigned to medical research, AIDS-ridden, no problem cloner, and all these catchphrases we do. We need Andy back. Hey, to Dave, I know you want to see Andy come back. Tell me about this fight next week. Brandon Rios is coming back against Aaron Herrera. Is this going to be the big second coming of Mr. Rios, or third or fourth coming by now?
It's a payday so that he can afford more burritos on the weekends. This is nothing to write home about. We'll see how he looks. Or maybe we won't, because I don't really plan on watching it unless I hear anything good about it. Yeah, not interested.
Dave, what about Mike Alvarado, Brandon Rios? Is it 4? Is it 3 now? What are we up to?
It would be 4 if they were to fight again. Did Mike Alvarado pick up a win a couple weeks ago?
He did. He knocked Matthew Strode, I believe it was, last week on the, what undercard? Michael Conlon undercard?
So I guess if Alvarado can get off the ching and Rios can get off the carbs, I mean, maybe they'd have like one last hurrah of 2 shot drunk guys kind of just pounding it out. It'd be mildly entertaining, but I mean, the third fight was pretty bad. It was just one-way traffic, and I mean, I don't want to see something like that again, really. It was sort of like the fourth fight between, who were those 2 guys, Marquez and Vasquez. They had that great trilogy, and then they kind of just had that fourth fight, which was nothing. Like, one of them was completely shot. So there's nothing to be gained really by tacking these on.
Yeah, Dave's right. If you want to see an excellent trilogy, and I mean one of the best trilogies in the sport in my time, since I've been watching it anyway, the Marquez Vasquez trilogy is absolutely amazing. But as Dave rightly says, the fourth one, avoid at all costs. Ooh, right, let's have a look. Donnie, are you still with us? Donnie? Donnie?
He's Skyping with Amir.
We seem to have lost Donnie. Dave, I know you've just spoken, but maybe you'll want to comment on this then. Over in Showtime, Lou DiBella's putting on a pretty decent main event in this card of prospects. Joel Diaz Jr., 23-0, is going in against Regis Prograis, 19-0, 10 rounds, NABF Super Lightweight title on the line. Prograis, a bit of a prospect, don't know an awful lot about Diaz Jr. This is one of those is it Showtime or Showbox cards, but looking forward to it.
Is that Diaz Jr. the son of Tim Bradley's old trainer, Joel Diaz?
I don't know. He's 25 years of age. I really couldn't tell you, Dave. He's from California, so we'll go out on a limb and say that he is. I'm looking down his record here, and he hasn't really beaten anybody of any great repute. And looking at Prograis' record, he was a decent amateur. He hasn't really beaten anybody either, Dave, apart from 14-0 Abel Ramos. So they're both relatively untested prospects.
Well, usually, like, talent will skip a generation or something. So usually the juniors that have a father who did not perform exceptionally well in boxing as far as their fighting career, usually they turn out a lot better than the juniors whose father was an ATG, like Ronald Hearns, or I guess he's not a junior, but Aaron Pryor Jr., for example. The juniors like Roy Jones Jr. and Floyd Mayweather Jr., their fathers did not reach great heights in the boxing world, and they turned out much better. So maybe this Joel Diaz Jr. will follow that pattern. I don't know. I've never seen him before. Probably won't watch this fight either.
Okay, thanks for that, Dave. We'll come to you to review that one next week. Kurt, I will be in attendance, and so will Dangerous Dave Lee next week, hopefully at this show in Belfast, Matchroom Boxing. Lee Haskins against Ryan Burnett for the IBF Bantamweight title. On the undercard, James Tennyson was supposed to be fighting Joel Brunker. He's now got Ben Jones over 12 rounds. Paul Hyland Jr. against Adam Dingsdale for the vacant IBF East-West Europe lightweight title. Ian Timsy Timms against Luke Watkins for the vacant Irish title. And unfortunately, Mike Perez against Tommy McCarthy is off. Don't worry about any of that, Kurt, because you probably don't give a shit. What about the main event? Haskins against Burnett. Burnett is highly thought of, Kurt, but Haskins is a wily old pro. How do you see this one going?
Yeah, I mean, on paper, it's a good fight. I mean, I like Haskins, but it's a tough one to predict. I mean, Burnett has got people talking about him, and if he's good as what people say, then he has to win this fight. But Haskins seems to be around for so long, and he's been there and done it. He's been in with everyone. It's like I said. I mean, I was impressed with him against Stuart Hall, and I mean, I like the guy, but you got to think Burnett will probably, it's tough to say. I mean, to be honest, I'm just thinking about that East-West title you mentioned. I mean, that's kind of clouded my mind. I forget this fight. Let's talk about that title on the line. I mean, it's just, we just love these kind of titles, don't we? That, I mean, how do they come up with that? I mean, it's just crazy. But
yeah, I mean, just called it the Rocky IV title.
Yeah, I mean, but yeah, that main event, I think that's the rest of the card. I mean, yeah, I got no interest in, but that main event is one of those ones that I think anything could happen in that fight. But yeah, it's a tough one to predict, which is what we want to see.
Rob, Ryan Burnett's obviously very highly thought of over here in Ireland. Gold medalist at the World Youth Championships, I think it was, when he was 18. He turned pro. A lot of the guys across the pond and that aren't really feeling it. He hasn't impressed in some fights. He hasn't shown his full potential. There is a case possibly that Adam Booth has been holding him back or whatever. But as Eddie says, Rob, the pressure's on Burnett because he's the hometown fighter. They need to bring the people out, get behind this guy, possibly if he's going to be built to be the new Frampton. But Lee Haskins, you know, he seems to neutralise fighters, doesn't he? He's shut down a young prospect in the past, and you know, we wouldn't bet against him doing it again.
Yeah, like Haskins, like I like his movement and that. Yeah, I mean, it's good to see. It's good to see. It's good to see the fights in Belfast and that. Like, I don't know if I like to see the guys go to the States. And I don't like them to see the hang around the British scene too long. I think the money's over there. Well, I know there's money back here. There's money back in the UK at the moment, but I just think the caliber of opponents for learning the ropes and stuff. You want to kind of see them over there. But yeah, no, I definitely wouldn't rule out Haskins. Thought he looked good in the last fight against Hall. He's a cute operator, like, so we'll see. It's a good test for Burnett anyway. We'll see if he's at that level yet. It could be a case that he might, you know what I mean, he might not make it at this level just yet, and he might have to take a backward step. But we'll see how quick he moves along. Like 16 fights, 17 fights. So we don't know. It's a good test for him where he's at the moment. So we have a good assessment of him after it, I think.
Rob, I know you'll be excited to see Big Timsy on the undercard, but it was a shame about the Perez-McCarthy fight falling through, regardless of whatever the reasons were.
I caught a couple of Perez's early fights on the Andy Lee early undercards. I was ringside at one of the fights versus Faliga, actually, and I saw him put some Eastern European away, and I could hear the punch ringside. It was a brutal knockout. Like, I know it was against a guy that wasn't good enough to fight him, but Tommy McCarthy's actually my mate, so I'm rooting for Tommy. I know he's training really hard on the comeback trail. Thought he was unlucky against Askins that time. He kind of got caught early in the fight and didn't recover for a couple of rounds, but he knows himself he could box better than that. I don't know what's going on with Perez. Like, he's another one of an enigma. I know he got hit with the hand of God against Povetkin. I was actually giving him a chance in the Povetkin fight, but maybe obviously Povetkin's on the vegetables, isn't he? Like, so. So he was kind of doomed over there. I don't know about him getting down to cruiser either. Like, I thought like he was always kind of fleshy at heavyweight. I don't know what's going on with him, but it's a pity for Tommy. I'm upset for him because he's one of the nicest guys in the sport, and very good amateur over here as well. Like, was unreal as an amateur. So love to see him do it in the pro game, and I think he will definitely get to a version of at least a challenge for the cruiserweight title anyway. So best of luck to him.
Yeah, it's a shame about Perez. I know that he took the Abdusalamov fight hard, obviously, as you would, and I think he was on the drink coming into the Povetkin fight.
Well, he did move to Ireland, you know what I mean? So, so no, it's not good to hear when you hear, like, we don't want to hear, like, as much as we criticize fighters and stuff like this, and this is why, like, I guess we criticize the likes of Brooke at elite level when, you know, when it jacket, like, because boxing is such a tough sport, like, you know what I mean? And to criticize Mike Perez is hard because, like, to look where he's come from to become a pro, even, you know what I mean, escaping the Cuban regime to come over and live in Cork, like, you know what I mean, of all places, to kind of to build his career and then go to the States and get a shot at that and be so, you know, being involved in one of the fights of the year, and then the guy gets injured, you know what I mean, and it's one he's not going to recover from. So we do kind of criticize fighters, but that kind of thing that goes on, we couldn't even imagine it, you know what I mean? So.
Yep, true enough, Rob. Yeah, it's definitely a shame about Perez and obviously the Cubans, Odlania Solis, Alexia Costa, and the one I always go on about, and not many people would have seen him, but Luis Garcia, the light heavyweight who came over. I mean, that guy just was supremely talented. I remember Tris Dixon saw him sparring in London. Apparently he went down to the bookies and put money on him straight away to becoming a world champion at some point. That guy was just something else, a criminal waste of talent.
There's been so many. What's the kind of biggest... I don't want to throw the conversation off here now, but what's the kind of biggest amateur prospect that you thought would do it and then either failed beforehand or after when they got to pro level?
Thinking of some of the American guys, maybe Ricardo Williams. He obviously got a $1 million signing on fee, didn't he? After he got silver in '96, I believe it was, and obviously Francesco Panchito Bajado as well was thought a lot of, and he just didn't really make it either. So. There's been a few, but Solis has to be for me. Kurt, what do you think?
Yeah, what about, was it David Reid, the American?
Oh, yes.
He had
He had the lazy eye, didn't he?
Yeah, and they just put him in against Felix Trinidad and just basically cashed him out. But yeah, I mean, he was really highly thought. There's the guy as well, I can't think of his name, but he came from the Crunk gym, and I think Manuel Stewart said he was better than anyone. I can't think of his name, someone will know, I'm sure, but... And he used to spar all the guys and used to get the better of them, but I think he had like drug issues. And
it's not Tony Ayala Jr., is it?
No, it's. I can't remember his name. But I think he had a few pro fights, but he just never made it. And Emmanuel Shu said he was the most talented guy he'd ever seen and worked with, and he was just, he was sparring with all the guys at the Crunk and was just, playing with them basically. And he just, the reason he just never kicked on, and I think he won his first 10 fights, and then he just descended into losses and just out of the ring problems.
I think some of them there were 6 of them from the same street in Detroit that all ended up fighting, either winning a world title or fighting for a world title out of the Kronk. I think they might have all won a version, but some of them ended up in some kind of like Boston George blow cartel situation. I can't remember which one of them was. Maybe some of the listeners could shed some light on it. But no, the one I was thinking about from the amateurs was does anyone remember Kelsey Banks from the States?
No,
he was hotly tipped going into the 88 Olympics. Him and Roy Jones is going to be like the two. I think he was a featherweight, but he got blasted out by a Dutch guy in the first round in the fight. Just a left hook, smashed him. I'd say Andy would probably. This is another reason we need Andy back. But no, I just remember him, and I don't know whatever became of him if he became a pro. But I remember he just got iced in the Olympics on the big stage.
Tommy, any wasted talents that dropped over from the amateurs and never quite made it?
Howard Davis, maybe. He never won a world title, Howard Davis. He's a good fighter, right enough, but...
Yeah, Howard Davis.
Where did he fight? He fought Jim Watt, didn't he? Who else? Bajado was a good one that you mentioned there, Steve. He was tipped for good things, big things back in the day. Quite a few. Victor Ortiz should have been better. He won a world title, but he should have been really better than... what it was.
What about one that's going on at the moment, Tommy? Frankie Gomez. We're watching it just not happen.
What's that, mate? Can you repeat that?
Frankie Gomez. Sorry, he's one that we're watching it implode at the moment.
Well, that's it, mate. He's got all the talent in the world, but it's just not happening for him right now. He's going to hit kick on. He's with Freddie Roach, isn't he?
Yeah.
Well, supposedly. Apparently, they never see him, do they?
Yeah, apparently he never goes to the gym.
He's a talented kid, but that's it, mate. They're just going to get him in the ring, and that he could be one of the nut jobs.
Definitely. So before we go to the Belly of the Week, Kurt, go ahead there.
Yeah, I was going to say that fight was Bernard Superbad Mays. I mean, I'll post a link for the thing. But it's got everyone talking about him, and Tommy Hearn saying he wanted to quit boxing because he dreaded going in the gym facing him every day. So I mean that shows how talented the guy was, but due to issues, alcohol and drugs, he just never reached his potential, which obviously, by the way people talk about him, he should have been the best of the best.
Thanks for that, guys. Donnie, are you back with us? Donnie? I don't know what's happened to Donnie. He's there in name, but we can't seem to get a response from him. We might have to try.
Andy's ever kidnapping him, man. He's ever creeping up behind.
Andy's cut his head off and kicked it down the street. We've lost Dave the Hater Low back. We've still got Tommy though, so that's a good one. So we'll hit you with this one, Tommy. This is quite a good question from Geordie McDonough. He says, in terms of how good fighters are, define an elite guy, a world-class guy, and a world-level guy. Now, this is quite a good list from Geordie McDonough here. He defines them himself, Tommy. He says, for me, elite is dominant in his division with a good resume. World-class is top 4 or 5 guys in the weight class, and world-level are pretty much guys from 6 to 12 who could pretty much all beat each other on any given night. I hope you heard all that, Tommy. That's a good list from Geordie.
I definitely. I think the way you've got to look at it though, how deep weight classes that are as well. The way I'd look at it would be you've got your elite guys, you've got your Andre Wards, obviously, you've got your Kovalevs and that, and you've got the level below it. You've got the level below that really, where you've got your guys like even your Carl Framptons and that. They're definitely a world class fighter, but as an elite fighter, probably no at this moment in time anyway. But that's the way. It's a pretty good point for the guy there. I think it's going to depend on the weight class and that as well. If you're top 5, say you're a top 5 at middleweight and that, are you really world class? You probably aren't, are you?
This is it. Like Paul Smith is a world. He's operating at world level because he's fighting for world titles, but is he world class or elite? Nope.
Is he fuck British level?
Yeah, that's a good point. I threw that in, Kurt, a while ago. I made a different sort of point. I said you have to have two titles, 2 belts now to be true world class, as we all used to know it. But I think Geordie's little list there, Kurt, is stronger than my point of view. Yeah,
well, we've said it many times. Now guys they get called world class for winning 2 rounds against a guy, or you go in there against Arthur Abraham, win a round, and you're world class forever and ever, and you get countless world title shots off the back of it. So, I mean, look, there's guys in each division you can look at, and I think boxing fans know that guy's world class, he's elite, and most of the other guys are just a bit below that. But yeah, Sky and the like of them will try and push everyone into the world class category, when I think boxing fans know better.
Boxing fans know better. Right, if there's anything anybody wants to discuss, we'll get it done at the end of the show. First of all, I'm going to briefly go through these Bellew of the Weeks and get that down. There is a shambles going on at the moment with the IABA, Irish Amateur Boxing Association. They've split into two different organisations calling themselves the IABA, and it's just an interesting sort of conversation point on boxing politics and how things are a complete mess from a system that has churned out great fighters over the years. So anyway, the point is I'm going to try and ask Joe O'Neill from irishboxing.com to come on next week or the week after to discuss that particular issue. We don't have Donny, but we will carry on with Bellew of the Week anyway. Briefly, guys, Andy Pops has sent this first one in this week for Neil Orr. He was tweeting at Dave Allen, former contributor to this podcast. He said, "Get down to cruiserweight, mate. You could unify that division." Okay, then. Thank you for that. Bellew of the Week nomination from Joey at Master Mode 33. Gregory Doyle was talking about Sam Eggington. He said, "Great fight for you, Sam, and a winnable one too for a world title would be Peterson. Get Peterson over to Brum and walk him down. Stoppage for you in the last third of the fight." Dredrick Tatum has been in on the mix, according to Lewis Greenslade. He said, "Lucas Brown versus the prime Mike Tyson would be a genuine 50-50 fight. I think Lucas
he's taking the piss. He's taking the piss. He's in the wind up, mate.
Is he right?
He does it all the time. Aye.
Lucas's power and size wouldn't be too much for Iron Mike then, Tommy, according to Dredrick, anyway.
Did Lucas not see last week he hits harder than Iron Mike? Sure he did.
He might nominate Lucas himself. South Cleethorpes were nominated by Kane at Irish Boxing News. They tweeted at Eddie, "Is this show pay-per-view again, Eddie?" As in Burnett Haskins. "I almost feel guilty if I don't give you 20 notes every week." I think he's probably taking the piss as well. It's hard to know Tommy these days.
That's me, aye.
James Rubin got nominated. "If we didn't have Eddie Hearn, boxing would be shite." Good on you, Eddie. Ellie Setback was nominated by Rocco. He says, "Boxing superstar Adrian Broner is one of the most popular athletes in the world. People say otherwise, just don't know." Another Dredrick Tatum nomination, but he has been outed by you, Tommy. This was a good one from Frank Warren. I'm not sure what he was up to on Twitter this week, but I noticed this myself, and Ozzie Smith sent it in himself. He just randomly tweeted out the blue, "And please follow back, baby." What was that all about?
Frank getting his DMs mixed up here.
Frank getting jiggy in the DMs, but he quickly deleted it afterwards. Good old Frank. Chad Hogan, aka Brian King, has nominated John Denton. He's talking about what's John Denton talking about? He says, I think. Oh God, I haven't screenshotted this one right, so I'll just nominate John Denton. Sorry about that, Brian. He was talking about Anthony Joshua, I think, and saying that Naz was more intelligent, Eubank Holyfield, to name a few. Oh, he's on about Mayweather. That's what he does. Mayweather selected his opponents when they were past their best. So a nomination for John. Thomas Lyons has said Eddie Hearn and Gilberto Ramirez. Really looking forward to seeing Paul Smith Jr. win a world title and bring another world championship back to the UK. All right, then, Thomas. He's not a bum, says Thomas. He's fought everyone at the top. He might not be the most established fighter, but he's operated at world level. What Rob was just saying there, operated at world level. This is a good one from William Monroe Jr. Leon on the Boxing Coalition sent this one in. William Monroe said, Sugar Ray Leonard won 90% of his fights with a 36-3-1 record. As of now, I'm at 91% with 21-2. With that being said, greatness isn't far away.
You always get the weird boxer random one, don't you?
And somebody said, Kurt, on that logic, Sven Opke is an all-time great.
Can't argue with the facts.
You can't argue with the facts. Michael Gearty has sent this one in. I want to fight Manny Pacquiao. Bradley Skeet destroys Shane Singleton and calls out Manny.
Probably not going to happen.
I wouldn't have thought so. Chris Blackman has sent this one in for Jay. The booing of Eddie Hearn is getting old quickly, said Jay. The bloke has played a huge part in making the UK the centre of the boxing world. Paul Baker has sent in a nomination for the Independent Sport. Ricky Gravel has sent this one in for Conor Benn. I'm a savage because I go in there and I get it done. No prisoners. It's you or me. That's a savage. And then he's got savage tattooed on the side of his arm in a really... It looks like he's done it with Indian ink at school or something. Looks absolutely terrible. SB Boxing Hub. Joshua will be the best ever. Used to love watching Hatton, but just love Joshua to bits now. More than any other fighter I've ever watched. Kurt, that's all I've got. I believe you have a nomination. Or was it Hater Dave who had one?
I got one.
Do you have one anyway?
No, mine was the Savage one.
Okay, that was the Savage one from Kurt. Rob, do you have any nominations you want to throw into the mix?
No, I've nothing from this week. Nothing that was really kind of stood out at me this week. Going through the iPhones and that. It wasn't really that busy this week, was it? So.
No, there wasn't that much going on, to be honest. Tommy, we've had a few good ones from Willie Munro Jr. Ellie Setback threw in a good one as well. And who was the other one? Dredrick Tate, and that was a scam. I liked Frank's one. What about you, Tommy? You got any nominations?
I've not got any, mate, but I want to say William Munro for me. He's my pick this week.
I'm torn, Rob. I'm torn between Frank and Willie Munro. What about you? Help me out.
I think Frank was just slacking on his Mac in there. You know what I mean? He made a schoolboy. I don't think he deserves the value for that. You know what I mean? He's got the money, baby. What's he going to do? He's new to technology. He's got to get out there. If Mosley can do it, why can't Frank Warren? You know what I mean? But no, I'm going to go for Willie Munro, man. He must be still punch drunk for when Golovkin hit him. Mentioning Sugar Ray Leonard, and the only route to him mentioning his own name with Sugar Ray Leonard should be that, like, in his uncle fight Hagler. That's the only connection I can make.
That's right. Yeah.
Come on. Yeah, so Willie can get that. Willie Munro can have it this week.
What about you, Kurt? A unanimous decision for Willie the Worm?
No, I'm going for Frank. Whenever Frank makes an idiot of himself, I just love it, and you can't get much better than this. I mean, he's sliding into DMs, but he's new to technology. He's made a mistake, and I've got to go.
Who might that be? I wonder who it is.
I'm just going to say that, yeah.
If any of the listeners have any ideas who Frank was trying to slide into with, send us in.
I know, Kurt. Who's the president of the WBO? Isn't it Val Cassell or something?
I don't think it was that one, Steve.
Donnie, are you still with us? We've lost Donnie. He's forgot he's on with us. I'm going to go for Willie as well. So that's 3 votes to Willie Munro. So congratulations, Willie. We've got no music for you, I'm afraid. They've done away with the sound effects, but congratulations, Willie. You might not win a world title, but you've won Value of the Week. Okay, that's all I've got. So anybody else want to add anything in? Any brief discussion points before we head on out? Then feel free.
No, I'm toast this week, mate. Ready for my bed.
Kurt, you
just
just
quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, what does everyone think about Eubank taking on Arthur Abraham? I mean, it's a bit of a step up from, what was it, Monday, and that was the rumoured fight.
Imagine they had made that fight. Imagine they made that. But I think Abraham's still a dangerous opponent for Eubank because Eubank's terrible. You know what I mean? He looks great beating up C-level fighters. Let's see what he's like when he's fighting a real fighter. Even though Abraham's 145 years old now, like I still think it's a level up apart from anything Eubank's fought, apart from Saunders, isn't it? Like so.
And I think as well, Rob, ITV have maybe forced his hand. We've heard all the rumours that they were desperate to get John Ryder in, and this is why it's took so long, because they were picking the Eubanks, Rob, a real low class of opposition, and they've forced them. John Wishausen's forced them into this, which is good.
Yeah, well, Ryder's my cousin actually. Well, he's distantly related to me, but I keep in good contact with his granddad. Like thorough boxing head, like. But they were going mad for the Eubank fight a couple of times, crying out for it, trying to get that Eubank fight. So didn't happen. But we're going to see him against somebody at least a live body now, aren't we? So.
Yeah, I think on the Ryder subject, when he was on the way up, Eubank maybe 10 or 12 fights or whatever on Sky, when he was fighting those numpties like Tony Jetta, Rob, I wouldn't have minded seeing the Ryder fight. I just think he's put himself on such a platform now with the pay-per-view, with the shitty world title, with the way he's putting himself across to the fans. He can't be acceptable, as a Ryder fight, no disrespect to John, you know what I mean?
No, well, John got jobbed in the last fight, didn't it? So it couldn't happen anyway, because if he'd won that title, maybe he'd have been in. They could have made an argument for that ITV, you know what I mean? But yeah, no, he needs to be in with like really, like, if Eubank's anything, like if he's anything at 168 or if he's anything at a fighter, he has to really want to fight the winner of Groves the Gale, like, doesn't he? Like,
Yep.
But like, you know, this is all going to be melting out of me. He might beat an over the hill Abraham and then, you know, try and con some money out of somewhere else. He's not a fighter, like, is he? Just be honest, like he's a calm man, like, isn't he? So
yeah, Tommy, final word to you. Abraham doesn't throw too many punches these days. You'd think that Eubank's activity and youth and freshness will be able to carry him through, but it's a decent enough name for the resume anyway.
I was actually on Twitter last night. I actually said on Twitter last night that I think Eubank he should force a stoppage in the fight. I think late, but a couple of guys were disagreeing, saying that maybe Arthur will fiddle his way through and lose a decision. But I think Chris should put him away.
That'll do. Thanks, Tommy. That was Tommy the Guru Allen, the big boss man over at the Nuthouse, doing us proud as usual. Rob Kelly was on the call. Great to hear Kurt Ward back again. Donny was here, and we can't get him for some reason. But anyway, thanks to Donny. Dave the Hater Lowback, special guest, Big Russ as usual, and obviously Kieran Mulvaney, who came in right at the top of the hour to give us his knowledge and insight for the first half an hour. Great to have Kieran on. So that'll do, lads. We'll speak to you all next week. Thanks for listening. Bye.